And we're live.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Page. We did already begin our agenda at 12:30, and we did approve the agenda. And I just wanted to bring it to people's attention that we did have an addition to the agenda, being a item 13.2, letter from the City of Peterborough regarding the adoption of their new official plan. And there is a new presentation from Richard Weldon and Christian Chan, and it will be added as item 7.1. There was a report that came back from closed session, and that report is to establish a new member to the Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee. And I would entertain a motion that Council appoint Gary Wall to the Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee for the balance of the 2018-2022 term of council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Belch. Just hit the space bar, Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Wonderful. Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Belch, if you could just tilt your screen down just a little bit. Excellent. Very good. Okay, so with that, then we will move along. Madam Clerk, you're okay?
Yes, Mayor McFadden.
Okay. So with that, then we'll move into the next item, which is item number 7, delegations. 7.1, Richard Weldon, Managing Partner, Romspen Investment Corporate RIC, and Christian Chan, Planner, C2 Planning, Land Use Planners, MZO Letter, and Supporting Documents, Kawartha Downs, 1382 County Road 28, and 1490 County Road 28, and 1683 Moore Drive. So I will just let you bring them in. Welcome, Christian. Welcome, Richard. Very good. Okay, so the floor is yours, Richard and Christian. And Madam Clerk, you're going to bring up their presentation on the screen.
Mr. Mayor, if it is okay if I have control over the slide deck. Other than that, then Mr. Weldon would have to indicate to Ms. Page in turning of the slide deck pages. But I can handle that should the council wish to do so.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, we can definitely advance the slides and we can run the presentation. Christian, you can just ask us to move on to the next slide. And Carly's just bringing the presentation up as we speak. One moment.
Great, thank you, Ms. Page.
Having some technical difficulty here, Mayor McFadden. Just give us one moment.
Okay. Councillor Moore, you can hear us loud and clear?
Yes, I can.
Very good. Okay, we can hear you as well.
Okay.
Dear Mayor McFadden, it looks like Carly's just lost connectivity. Just give us 1 second. She's just going to rejoin.
Okay.
our basic troubleshooting has had to do a restart. One moment, please. No. Slides. Through you, Mayor McFadden, can you see the presentation?
We can see it.
Wonderful. So as we proceed, Christian, just ask us to move to the next slide as you would like us to advance.
Thank you, Cindy. Yes, Richard will be speaking on his points, and he will request the advancement of the slides. And when I come to the land use planning matters, I will as well indicate what to change. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and fellow members of council. My name is Richard Weldon. Before I start, I do want to say this is about the Kawartha Downs revitalization. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that our facilities are located on the traditional lands of the Curve Lake and Hiawatha Indigenous people. Next slide, please. Romspen. The site is currently owned by Romspen Investment Corp. I am a managing partner of Romspen. It's a mortgage fund that is a very large foreign fund. It's Canada's largest private mortgage investment fund with assets under administration of over $3 billion. The property, as I said, is owned by RIC KDL Inc. I do want to say Romspen is over 50 years old currently. And it's an interesting parallel because the Kawartha Downs facility is going to be celebrating its 50th anniversary. So it takes a lot of, there's a lot of things you have to do right to be 50 years old. I know I'm past 50. So in any case, the two facilities celebrating, with the Kawartha Downs being 50 years old, it marks a milestone. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So as far as the team introduction goes, what our leader is actually Mark Downing, and I believe that most of members of council, Mayor is familiar with. He built the beautiful, lovely community center in the Cabin Monaghan, and he is very familiar with the town, which is why he hired him. And the town is also, the area is also very familiar with him. So he's a key part of our team. And unfortunately, he had a conflict today and he couldn't be present, but he's going to be very much involved with the development over time. You can notice numerous different people here. I won't go into all the different people here, but I will point you out that we have started our Indigenous consultation, and we do have Gary Pritchard, who is leading the charge for us with the Indigenous First Nation peoples. And we have set up meetings with them at the first potential opportunity that they gave us. Next, please. So project overview, next slide, please. This project, the revitalization, is building on 50 years of successful operating history at Kawartha Downs. The idea is to create a commercial hub with hotel, with slots, bingo, a very large concert venue, and agricultural fairgrounds. The intent is to bring well-paying jobs to the area with a very strong focus on agriculture and tourism. In order to be able to accomplish this, we have to bring in a comprehensive servicing solution. It's going to be private, that spurs employment growth in the area and includes the airport and other neighboring industrial properties. As part of this development, and the second part of it, we will planning on building a broad range of housing types to complement the commercial redevelopment once the revitalization is well underway. Next slide, please. This is showing, this chart here shows the regional plan of Kawartha Downs, and you can notice that it's part of a community. The community is, our downtown area is Millbrook, and it's a Millbrook Business Improvement Area. It's a very integral part of the entire area. And we support the business improvement area, we support its growth and its expansion, and we've always indicated that we're very much working with them as a team. If you notice, that's on our that's on our western boundary, but on the eastern boundary is the Peterborough Municipal Airport, which is what everybody knows is in Cabanonican. Unfortunately, that airport has had issues with servicing and it's been unable to expand. We are providing and extending an olive branch to the airport to allow for servicing in that area, which creates a lot of jobs and economic growth. And we feel that what we're doing will create a catalyst for growth in the area. Next, please. This slide shows the existing site with the horse track. Next. Thank you. This is the comprehensive integrated revitalization development. Next slide, please. And you'll notice in this particular slide that shows the housing and it shows the commercial, you'll notice the setback of the 30-meter setback off the wetlands, all that area in green. And in this particular development, you'll notice that the environmental and all the environmental areas have been protected and the environmental constraints respected. Next, please. This is a little bit more detail now on what we're proposing. If you look at we have the existing horse track in the center. We're taking out the car racing immediately. Car racing never worked here, but the horse track is something that we're building on and expanding on. We're asking for additional horse dates. And we'll be talking about that afterwards, but we're going to be looking to try and bring quarter houses to this particular field, to the facility. We're also looking at doing soccer fields. We have an outdoor amphitheater for concerts. We noticed the existing casino in the area. We also have an event center that could have indoor soccer, could also have concerts, and you notice there's a hotel. On the left part of the drawing that shows that there'll be the fairground area where they'll have tractor pulls and we're going to have overflow parking. And there will be, as part of this development, will be a lot of regional fair and agriculture focused projects and all sorts of fairs and exhibitions and so forth. You'll notice there's also site services is in the building up in the upper right-hand corner. There's services that will be developed there. I wanted to emphasize that this development will be a family-friendly development. And what I mean by that is it appeals to families young and old. There will be things for children and there'll be things for younger and older children as well. And I've always been amazed when I've attended the racetrack and various events of the horse racings, how many children and how many families with children come and love the actual, the attraction of the horses, and the attraction of fairgrounds is always well known. And if we can accommodate and work integrated with the other fairgrounds in the local area, we can have a very successful agricultural fairground area in our facility as well. We're also looking at the soccer fields, which is underserved in the community. So by bringing in soccer fields, we can support a lot of the nonprofits in the area who are coming to us complaining that they just don't have the facilities in the neighborhood. And again, these facilities will be provided as part of our development. Next, please. This is a showing of the residential development. It's going to be done as a phase 2. It will be done as a secondary part of the development once the commercial development of the facility gets well underway. Next, please. I'm going to pass that over now to Christian to go through a quick review of the land use planning. Christian.
Yes, thank you, Richard. And again, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of Township Council and staff. My name is Christian Chen of C2 Planning, and we are retained by RIC to advance and facilitate the required planning applications and moving forward with this proposal. So if I can please ask Ms. Page to go to the next page. So in this proposal, there are 2 planning components that are being proposed. A would be the revitalization of the Kawartha Downs lands, which is for all intents and purposes already zoned for the proposed revitalization and their associated uses. So with regards to that component, a detailed site and servicing plans is what is being proposed for the revitalization of Kawartha Downs. As part of the supporting development, this is the residential component, which is the real focus in terms of the planning approvals that we are seeking to permit in order to advance the residential development. Next slide, please. So the lands that currently contain the Kawartha Downs racetrack are currently zoned and designated in the official plan for commercial entertainment uses. The lands to the north, the portion of the lands that are proposed to be used for the residential development, agricultural. But in the official plan, it is designated as a commercial entertainment. And the commercial entertainment uses are not heavy or noisy or industrial uses. They include permissions for hotels and motels, meeting facilities, convention facilities, gaming facilities, theaters and entertainment auditoriums, and recreational facilities, and supporting uses such as parking, restaurants, and their associated accessory uses. This is why we see no conflict from a land use planning basis in terms of the proposed residential development in relation to the Kawartha Downs revitalization, as horse racing is not an everyday use. It is not a big noisemaker. The auto racing component has been eliminated. The concerts are also not an everyday use and can be restricted to acceptable hours and noise levels, as well as the orientation of the amphitheater. The rest of the proposal as part of the Kawartha Downs revitalization is for passive agricultural and commercial uses designed to work well with the proposed neighborhood while creating additional jobs in the township. Next slide, please. So here we provide to you, and I'm sure you're familiar with the site, some site photos of the existing grandstand. Next slide, please. And here we have a wider shot of the context of the existing commercial entertainment use, namely the racetrack that is before you, as well as a grandstand in the background, as well as the associated supporting structures that you see to the right of the screen and in the background. Next slide, please. So as part of the supporting residential development to the Kawartha Downs revitalization, we are proposing 123 single detached homes, 272 semi-detached homes, 193 townhouse units. So we're providing a range of low-rise residential development forms that are fully serviced, that have sidewalks on both sides, and that will cater to a number of residential life cycles of future residents for a range of housing forms. Next slide, please. So with regards to the existing land uses for the Kawartha Downs site itself, we can see the aerial image on the left with outlines, which shows before you the existing commercial uses with the racetrack, also the supporting buildings such as the transformer station, the main building, the tools and equipment building, the barns and stables for the existing horse racing, as well as we can clearly see here on the aerial maps the existing natural areas that exist on the site. On the right of your screen, we have the aerial of the lands that are proposed to be redeveloped with residential uses. They are currently used for agricultural fields. We can see also that there are natural areas coursing through the site that will be protected and will not be developed upon and remain intact. Next slide, please. With regards to the official plan, we can see that the speedway, the existing site, forms a natural part of where the existing hamlet boundaries are. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And I'd like to highlight also to the council that in the township's official plan, with regards to development constraints, we can see here that the existing site and also the areas of the site that are proposed to be developed for residential uses are not indicated as having any development constraints. If we go to the next slide, please. With regards to the official plan, again, if you can go back. Here we have the official plan map, and we can see here that the lands are designated in the official plan as commercial and entertainment uses. This includes the lands that are proposed to be redeveloped with the residential component. But we also see here that there are natural core areas on the site, which again will remain intact and protected. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And here is a map of the site with regards to the township's zoning bylaw. The existing racetrack lands are zoned for C4, which permits the commercial entertainment uses. And we can see here too that the northerly portion of the site, those lands that are proposed to be redeveloped for residential uses are zoned agricultural A. So we will have to seek a rezoning to reclassify the lands for the residential uses for the northerly portion of the lands. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Christian.
I would like to pass the slide deck over to Richard.
Thank you very much, Christian. On our objectives, next slide, please. So we're looking for a new future for horse racing in Southeastern Ontario. Most people are actually trying to shut down horse racing. We're looking to expand it. I know Mayor McFadden will agree that we constantly have been asking OLG and the horse people for new and more dates. We've asked for 40 dates almost for the last 4 years. I think we drive them crazy because we're actually the only ones who actually want more horse racing. We're being told by people, well, horse racing doesn't make any money. Well, we've said we like to do horse racing because it's really important for the employment of people in and around the area. If you look around the neighborhood, you'll see there's a tremendous amount of horse tracks. There's a tremendous amount of people who rely on Kawartha Downs. And so we're very proud of that heritage and we want to build on that. One of the things we want to do is, again, a new agricultural fairground for Southeastern Ontario. A lot of fairs are are trouble. And so we're sitting there, why don't we expand it and actually try to boost agribusiness and fairgrounds, make it a more destination area, our particular facility. So the economic development is very big and agency partnerships we're looking forward to. And again, there's diverse residential growth. Next, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we are abandoning the dual racing format. We're getting rid of car racing and we're focusing on horse racing. I mentioned also that Kevin Monaghan has supported our bid to dramatically increase horse rates, which we appreciate, and we intend to introduce quarter horse racing for 2022-2023. That is something we're planning. It's not a done deal, but we're certainly in serious discussions to have that happen. Next, please. Again, our proposed Southern Ontario Agricultural Fairground will work in concert with those that already exist in Peterborough, Millbrook, Lindsay, Port Hope, Orono, and Port Perry. Next, please. Partnerships that we have is Peterborough Airport, the Millbrook Business Improvement Area. Very, very important, integral to our plans. We support the business improvement area. We understand there's some programming coming up and so forth, and we've been working in concert with them, and we're happy to work with them to help them expand and continue their very important programming. It's a phenomenal area, and we love it. Local fairgrounds, community care access, Lions Club, nonprofit sports organizations as well. I just wanted to mention that Kawartha Downs has always been a real communal facility. Just on the last weekend, we had a group of crafters. It was one of the people in our food and beverage said, why don't we have it sponsor some eventing for a whole bunch of crafters? So we opened up our doors, free admission, and we had 600 people. 600 people came back. That's the kind of thing that helps the economy grow. These people had never, they didn't have a place to go. We can showcase local artists. We can showcase local craftspeople. And it was so successful. We're going to keep doing more and more of that. And whatever funds we get are going to be given to the business improvement area. Next slide, please. Residential growth, our planned residential community will provide a broad range of housing types. So it'll include singles, semis, and townhouses, which will provide a lot more choice to the community than what I see as traditional single-family homes that are new single-family homes in the area. Next slide, please. So again, what are the benefits? The benefits are, say it 3 times, jobs, jobs, jobs. Indoor and outdoor community programming. I just hit on a few little things with the craft people, but I mean, there's also so many other potential programming aspects that we can deal with. We have a large-scale concert facility. We've got international companies that want to locate here because of its ideal location. It'll feature local, regional, international acts. We are planning a big 50-year anniversary bash for next year with major events and local events. And we really want to make a big push into that whole area, but I think it'll really take off very, very well. Again, a hotel needs to boost tourism for the whole area. We work with nonprofits because we support their needs. It's been tough during COVID. The nonprofits have been cash starved, and some of our programming, we're intending on doing bingo with the nonprofits, and 50% of our top line revenue will go to fund those nonprofits, allowing community programming, allowing all sorts of things that can happen in the area. Again, we have a focus on working with local trades and employees. If this one gets off the ground, we're going to have an employee fair, a job fair, hopefully early in the new year, to talk about how to do business with us and how to get hired, because we will put an emphasis on local and Indigenous people in the area. And again, servicing, improved servicing to the airport is critical, we think, for economic growth. Next slide, please. I'm just going to touch on, in order to make all this happen, we need servicing, and it's going to be an on-site servicing facility. Romspan, through its many different companies that it also is involved with, we currently own a number of sewer systems and their communal systems. We're currently partners in the Horseshoe Valley system, so we're familiar with operating them, and we're also familiar with their expansion. I believe, next slide, please. I believe council is familiar with the Nuterra system, and I understand that there was a tour planned that happened within the Prince Edward County where they visited a Nuterra type plant. Our facility, this would be very similar to, this would be a Nuterra type plant. 500 cubic meters is being planned. That is underway, and it's capable of being modular. If you go to the next slide, we can show you. This is how you can upgrade it. It can be planned to start as a certain size development, and you can add a continual modular to go bigger and bigger. So if we needed to develop around the airport, we could service the airport. If there was, because the airport is serviced potentially, there could be all sorts of industrial development, which creates a lot of employment that would be serviced out of our facility. Again, we would operate it. We'd be happy to talk about transferring over to the municipality at a certain point in time after a certain number of years. That's all in discussions. Next slide, please. So again, one thing I wanted to emphasize, we're going to be asking council here for a municipal zoning order, but I want to say that we fully respect the process, the planning process. The request for a municipal zoning order allows to make all this that we're talking about today, the revitalization of Kawartha Downs, within a 2 to 5 year time frame, instead of 10 to 20 years. Things seem to happen a little bit slowly with all the areas. I could say I wish everything worked as smoothly as working with Gavin Monaghan, but in the surrounding area, it just seems to take forever. And it potentially could take over 20 years to make it happen without a ministerial zoning order. What we are doing is we are respecting in the environment. Many people have read about other municipal zoning orders where they rushed plans through and they didn't do their studies and they didn't respect the environment. That's not us. We respect the planning process 100%. We incorporate others. We're looking at the airport. We're looking at the Millbrook business improvement areas, other nearby industrial lands that have been frozen for the longest times because they don't have servicing. Servicing unlocks it. And we are the keystone, if you want, that will kickstart development in this area, allowing for growth, jobs, and lots of employment. So again, we will honor, we've started the Indigenous Consultation, which is very, very important. And so we have hired consultants and we are working, setting up meetings. I believe our first meetings in February that we asked for the first available date. That was the date that was available for both Curve Lake and Hiawatha, since we are located on their traditional lands. The other thing I wanted to confirm is that the ministerial zoning order will not shortcut or sidestep any municipal planning process. All the studies have to be done, all the required work needs to be done, and staff needs to be fully satisfied before we can proceed. So that is absolutely critical. Next slide, please. Again, I won't go through all the reports. I didn't want to get into all the details, but we've done a tremendous amount of reports. You can see that there's been servicing and there's been water supply and there's been archaeological and traffic and noise and stormwater and agriculture and so forth. All these things have been underway and many of them have started, but they all require completion before we can actually get this project to come to fruition and start and get it under construction. Next phase, please. Wetland setback, you can see that as part of the development, you'll see the wetlands that are there. There's a 30-meter required under the provincial policy statement. We're respecting the provincial policy statement, and we're respecting the environmental setbacks that are required. The 30-meter setback is absolutely important, very important. You can see that the way the housing is developed, it's actually respecting setbacks on all sides. Next slide, please. Traffic study is underway, and the next one, please. Again, there's a number of traffic improvements that have to be done as part of our traffic study. I won't get into the specific details, but wherever improvements are required, they will be paid for by us. There is no municipal requirements, anything. We will be paying them as a private development. We will pay all the traffic improvements. And again, all these studies have to be done to the satisfaction of staff. And we can only proceed once these reports have all been completed. And as I say, once they've all been, once there's full satisfaction by staff. Next, please. So our commitment is, this is a phased development. The revitalization will be the first phase. In other words, no housing will be built until after the first phase. I've heard it over and over again that Council has been very disappointed with people who promise and all sorts of promises and they don't deliver on their promises. So they've been overpromised and underdelivered. We're the opposite. Romspen has been doing this for a long 50 years. So we are 54 years. We understand development. We understand. I'm involved in over 15 to 18 different projects, and I'm very familiar with this process, which is basically the council is often saying to us, show us what you're going to do, and we'll give you what you need to make this happen. So what does that mean? It means that we are not going to proceed with any type of housing until the first phase of Kawartha is going to be completed. And that involves the hotel and involves all the other facilities, the concert facility and so forth. All those need to be well underway before any housing can occur. And that means no cost to Kevin Monaghan. Next, please. Again, no risk by the township to the township. The site is owned by the fund. We did not go in buying the fund. We did not go in buying the land. This land was a failed development undertaken by a previous developer named Skip Ambrose that everyone is familiar with. We have not, like a traditional bank, we didn't just bail on it like most banks and throw it out and say, forget it. We knew it didn't make money and we knew we would have to have red ink for a number of years. However, I have a weakness. What? I love Kawartha Towns. I'm the managing partner in charge of this, and I absolutely love this facility. And I've hung on, and I believe the council knows, and Mayor McFadden knows, we have been up against all the challenges across with OLG taking us down and various things where they wanted to relocate casinos and so forth. And we've hung on. And what I want to say is Romspen is, sorry, just the previous one. Oops, the next, there it is. We have provided billions of dollars of mortgage financing across North America. So we have our own portfolio of rental units, shopping centers, industrial buildings, and we're building out 2,000 homes all across North America. So we're all the way from Halifax, Victoria, and Collingwood to Los Angeles. We understand what this is. It's one thing to talk about a promise to people, but it's another thing to be able to deliver. Most developers require, well, we have to sell this or we have to do that, or most people come and say, well, if I don't sell the residential, how can I build the other stuff? No, we're saying we're building the commercial first and then we build residential. Why? We have a big balance sheet. We put our money where our mouth is and we know what is required here and we work in partnership with the township. Next slide, please. So our request today is, as what I wanted to say is, in the past, we have we've partnered with you, with the town. And before I make my request, I want to thank you for your support, because without that, we couldn't be where we are today. You supported us when we went and they went to cancel horse racing. You supported us when they wanted to cancel the slots. They said there's no business with two facilities and two casinos being so close together. We all know it doesn't make a lot of sense. We lobbied hard and we said that horse racing cannot survive without casinos, so they kept the casino there. Recently, I just renegotiated another 5-year extension with them, and I keep asking them for more horse racing. And they keep telling me they don't understand why we want more horse racing when most people are phasing it out. But nevertheless, we continue because we're stubborn and we believe in the facility. We've also supported, as I mentioned, we've supported through years of red ink. And you know, we're not like the traditional bank where we see the long-term vision. And I've always believed in the potential here. So we have partnered with you all the way on this. We're requesting a municipal zoning order today, which serves to kickstart the process and allows us to be into 2 or 3 year period, not a 15-20 period. As I say, it respects the process, the planning process. It doesn't try to sidestep it. And it's only the first phase, and all the studies will have to be completed. Staff will have to be completely satisfied. I want to emphasize that really importantly. The MZO allows this facility to become a destination commercial center. And with the private servicing system, it allows for industrial development through the airport expansion and servicing of the industrial lands. The potential for this area is incredible, but can't happen without the MZO. So again, one thing I do say is, I know council has had issues with developers overpromising, as I said earlier, and we have done many of these before. So I'm making a commitment before everyone today that this commercial redevelopment will start first before the residential can be initiated. Again, I really want to thank everyone, and I really appreciate the time and I appreciate the support. And as I say, I absolutely love Kawartha Downs. I go there a lot. I love the facility. I'm looking forward to its next chapter, but it's building on its previous success and moving forward to the next to the next generation. And the one thing I do need is I do need your support to make this happen. And I just want to say thank you very much. And I'm open to questions. Happy to answer any questions people have.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Weldon, and thank you, Mr. Chan. Questions from members of council? And Councillor Moore, if you've got questions, you can either just interrupt or you can raise your hand and I can acknowledge you. You're on the phone.
Okay, thank you. I do have a few questions.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Okay, my first one you kind of answered. Sorry. What would the wages paid to staff be? Are we going to be on the minimum wage or on the higher paid spectrum?
Well, we tend to pay higher than minimum wage typically. Again, it depends on the job. We have unions and non-union workers, so we respect the union requirements. But when it comes to non-union people, we tend to pay higher because it's we think they're special. A lot of these people have been here for many, many years, and we do merit-based pay, and very often we pay greater than the minimum just because they're special.
Okay, thank you. And another one is your traffic study. I know you don't have all the results, but at the end of a concert or a general increase in the site traffic, what are you going to do to control that? Like it used to be years ago when Kawartha Downs was booming, it was always controlled by the police. Because 28 is not that big a road to carry heavy traffic, and you're going to have big concerts. We need to know what's going to be safe and controlled.
Well, again, that would be fully detailed in the traffic study, and the staff will have to be fully satisfied of it. But to the extent there are large amounts of people that are there, we would bring in police as we need, which would be helped if it requires it. But again, what we try to do is filter it through the site and actually allow, not force all the traffic onto 28 at the same time. We would have to bring it out over time. So again, that's a discussion with our traffic people, and happy to have staff go through it in greater detail.
Okay, thank you. And I have two more questions and I'll leave you alone. The other one is I'm concerned about the proposal to move growth allocation from Millbrook to Fraserville. Because there's an impact on the existing development plans. Is this not actually an expansion rather than moving it?
I see it as a relocation. We're providing jobs, and while I support Millbrook and I think it's a phenomenal development that's happened over there, I think what Kevin Monaghan, and this is speaking for me, and I believe I speak for the council as well, that it's all about jobs and it's about employment. And it's one thing to have housing, because I mean, we all know that housing can go as far up to Lindsay, and housing is always easy to develop. But if you don't bring employment to the area, how are you going to create jobs? How are you going to increase your tax base? How are you going to have economic development? Houses bring people places to live, but if all the people here are living and commuting in Toronto, how does that help local municipality? How does that help with tax base? So I don't see it as anything other than a relocation of the existing housing, the growth plan that's there. So the housing is more, to me, it would make more sense to be in an area where housing and employment is created rather than in an area where there's just more additional housing. So we're not expanding it, we're actually just relocating it and making it an area of an integrated development that provides jobs and employment.
The only thing is some of these people have already started their work in progress. And I don't think we're setting ourselves up very nicely. Anyway, and the last question is the summary of the draft fiscal impact. Like, what would the revenues be for the township compared to the cost?
Well, that's part of our economic impact study. It's going to be substantial. I don't have the exact numbers here, but again, that'll all be provided in the economic impact statement, which is underway. But clearly, with all the increase in the tax revenue and clearly with all the economic base and the jobs that are there, it's going to be a major, major boost to Cavan Monaghan, which will allow much more programming for nonprofits and allow the business improvement area to flourish, along with, again, with all the soccer facilities, it's going to attract more and more people here. So the economic boost, if we can actually get working with the airport and create a whole bunch of industrial development around, that's going to be enormous fiscal impact that's going to be helping Cavan Monaghan.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. There's good questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Maybe if I could just to seek some guidance and assistance from staff. Councillor Moore raised some really good questions. Just for some clarity, if the traffic impact study was to determine that lights would be required, for example, at the intersection of Highway 28 And Richard, I'm certain you could answer, but I know it'll assist if possibly Mr. Conley could provide some input. Who would pay for the lights?
I can say we would, Councillor, Mr. Mayor.
I'm looking for a couple nods.
So through you, Chair, to the rest of council, what he said. I think the intention there is that as development comes forward and if it hits certain critical thresholds in terms of needing more infrastructure, then those are being paid by the developer who comes in through the door. But perhaps the Director of Public Works may want to weigh in and sort of if he has a different opinion.
Mr. Hancock?
I think, again, Mr. Mayor, the developer has indicated that he would do site-specific improvements. And I think we've already, the traffic study that was on the screen had looked at lane improvements and possibility of traffic lights. So those would be site-specific. It is a county road, and they would be implemented through county staff recommendations. The only other area of funds would be through development charges, and that would be the two ways that the funds would be raised, but it should be developer paid in this situation.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. And I guess council could be reminded how the township paid for our turn lane into our community center on the county road. The master servicing plan that we've just dealt with it identifies our growth till 2041. And so picking up on the question that Councillor Moore raised relative to swapping, I think the wrong word is being used relative to swapping. It's my understanding our plan for Millbrook to 2041 and all the allocations and the maximum capacity, that growth is going to Millbrook. It's going to Millbrook till 2041. And then we hit the wall with regards to our capacity as identified in our master servicing plan. So the county and the official plan that they're working on is to 2051. So there's the gap of servicing and the lack of population that has not been identified to where it's going between 2041 and 2051, which will have to be determined as an outcome of our master servicing plan, which currently only goes till 2041. So I just want that distinction, Mr. Conley, that we're not actually swapping or stopping any of the residential development that's in Millbrook in order to consider the residential development that's going on in Fraserville.
So through you, Chair, to the rest of council, apologize for the echo. Through you, Chair, to the rest of council. So that is correct. I think in terms of any specifics on the master servicing plan, certainly Mr. Hancock can give you an opinion on that. But right now, I'm working with the county on the municipal comprehensive review they're underway. It is looking to 2051. I will remind council that council last year approved a growth management strategy, and that looked to 2041. That's been updated to include that extra 10 years. And the indication is there at some point there would be growth in Millbrook as identified, and then there'd be growth elsewhere in the township. But
very good. And the last question that Councilor Moore had was relative to the revenues that would be in it for the township, which once again is a great question. And I know we may not necessarily have the specific projections, Mr. Weldon, but in addition to the property taxes, and I know they were quite significant at one point when Kawartha Downs was booming, the addition of the hotel and the additional venues, et cetera, would certainly increase your MPAC value. I'm certain we would appreciate a higher one and yourself lower, but I know at the end of the day, it's definitely going to be higher, which would be an increase in property taxes. But I'm certain we can all remember back to the days of the slots and the amount of funds that came to the municipality directly from the slots. And with regards to this being established as a destination, I would suspect, Mr. Weldon, that the intention is to make it a destination and certainly encourage more users of the slots, which would certainly increase the revenues, not only to yourselves, but also to the township.
Well, 100%, 100%, Mayor. I think as we all remember, when it was the good old days and the revenue that came to to Cabin Monaghan was quite substantial. And I think with making it a destination, the problem we have today is that there's people come and they go to the slots, but there's nothing to keep them there. There's no restaurants, and we do have a restaurant, but there's not enough entertainment used to keep them there. So by making it a destination, as you say, you increase the tax base, but you increase the number of people that are coming through it. And if there's more people in the concerts, you'll actually double and triple and quadruple your amount of patrons that go to the casino. I would not be surprised if they came back to me, OLG, and said to me that they want to lease back the entire facility because all of a sudden they need their 400 to 600 to 800 slot machines. Again, it all builds on being a destination. It all works together. It's an integrated development altogether. And I would certainly see that the take for the municipality just on the OLG portion alone, not to mention the increased tax base, would be substantial on that.
Very good. Thank you. Questions from members of council? Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Belch. And then I got Councillor Huntley after that. Go ahead, Councillor Belch.
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Weldon. I love the idea of a concert venue. What size do you anticipate? How many people would be accommodated?
Excellent question, Councillor. It's in order to make it a concert facility viable, you need between 4,000 and 5,000 people. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. For the acts to come in and for the costs and expense and all the security and so forth, you need 4,000 to 5,000 people.
Okay,
we would have
thank you.
parking for that. As you can see, we have overflow parking on site that we can accommodate.
That was going to be my next question is with that facility built, it's going to be right on the area where we have existing parking right now. So are you going to be pushed to expand the parking area?
Well, absolutely. Again, if you look at the area on the left of the facility, just by Ayers Road there, that would be an overflow parking area. So we would be developing that for overflow parking, and that would also be our fairground area as well. So again, okay. They don't happen at the same time, and they're all different. They'd be sequential different times. But when the fairground's there, obviously we wouldn't be doing the concerts. Concerts are mostly at night and so forth. So again, it's similar to the C&E, I guess, if you want. There's concerts that are held, and there's also venues that are held for agri fairgrounds, that type of thing. But we did, as part of the traffic study, happy to share it with you because it's in our list of studies. But clearly, we've identified how many parking spots and a design of those parking spots on our existing facility to ensure that people are contained within our site.
Thanks.
Very good. Just picking up on Councillor Belch's question relative to the amphitheater, the outdoor amphitheater. Concerns have been raised relative to the direction of the amphitheater towards Sire Line and the residents that are along there. Obviously, they may appreciate the music, but they may not wish to be part of every concert. So with that in mind, I'm assuming as part of your studies, there would be a sufficient noise barrier to ensure that their impact of the noise in immediate proximity would certainly be minimized?
Absolutely. Again, the detail will be in those reports, but I mean, yes, absolutely. We are very respectful of our people. We've designed it in such a way to minimize any impact. There'll be acoustical barriers that will be in there. We're looking at potential landscaping buffers that could be put in there, but we'll certainly be able to figure out the sound transmissions to minimize it. But I do want to point out that car racing was an approved use, and the car racing was way louder than that. People could hear it for miles as opposed to a few hundred yards. So by eliminating the cars, I believe we're adding a benefit to the community, and the concert will not be won't be happen as frequently, but definitely we'll be putting in place mitigation and soundproofing that best we can at state of the art with our sound people that have done a lot of work for Cinerama and all the major other facilities. So they're very experienced in this. Mr. Mayor, I believe that we can satisfy the requirements of staff to make sure that these are all accommodated for the community.
Very good. Councillor Huntley, I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I did. And through you, Chair, to Mr. Weldon. I guess a couple questions. First one being, how many jobs are you projecting at this new facility?
Wow, that's a tough one to answer because it'll be in our economic impact study, but there's definitely going to be, I'd have to say between probably 50 and 100 jobs, maybe more. And there'll be construction jobs, several hundred more as during the construction of all the development here. But to give you an exact account, I'd have to defer to our study, which we'll be going through, but happy to share it with you. But again, at this point in there, it's becoming quite substantial, but I can't give you the exact number.
Okay. I guess approximately how big do you think this hotel is going to be as well?
Well, again, it'll be subject to our market studies that are there, but we're leaning towards about 150 suites, 150 units to 200. It really depends on where we see the demand of the concerts. The more concert we have, the more demand there is for the facilities. I'm quite familiar with the other, with the Hard Rock in Vancouver that is done by Shorelines, actually owns the same with Great Canadian Gaming and now Apollo. And the amount of, with the concerts, it works well with the hotels because people can make it a destination. So again, we're going to be building the hotel, which also can be modular so that we could add on. If it starts off at 100, we could add another 50 rooms, another 100 rooms. Our intention is to go as big as we need to to satisfy the demand. And if there's more and more demand in this area, and again, if the airport expands, there's no facility for them to stay nearby, we would get the overflow of the airport as well. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying depending on the studies, we can make it as big as we want to. And I think there's a need for a hotel in this particular area, especially with employment growth that's going to happen around here.
Mhm. I don't disagree with you at all there. That's for sure. We need hotels. I guess you're kind of answering my other question, which is there's a lot more conceptual here than there is, the actual hard and fast, because my next question would be around that, the residential development in that, or things like parks and playgrounds and things like that, accounted for. And obviously you can't see them very well in your rendering. But again, if this is all still conceptual and you're still kind of working on that, then it makes more sense. But you can confirm or deny that for me if you want.
Well, Councillor, good question. Again, it is early. On the other hand, it's a very serious proposal because we've done a tremendous amount of work to get this far. So these aren't just sketches. These are hard, fast drawings of sorts that we've laid out. Of course, there has to be parks. Of course, there has to be work with the local schools to figure out playgrounds and other areas. There's always requirements for park dedication, 5% park and so forth. We're happy to work with the Parks Department. We're happy to work with Cavan Monaghan to determine what are the needs in the area. I mean, the fact that we're building the soccer facilities means that we're going to have a fuller facility right next door to these residents. So they're going to have access to the soccer fields. They're going to have access. We could even do a park inside our development if there's room as well. So again, I don't want to say that this is so preliminary that we can't accommodate the needs of what I consider to be a real growth area for Cavan Monaghan. So we would certainly support putting parks in there, and as part of that whole development, we're also talking about trails. You didn't mention trails, but I'm going to mention it as well. In the wetlands there can be trails, there can be a whole type of nature walks that could be done in there. We could accommodate all sorts of needs. Again, I'm referring back to families, and families want parks and families want playgrounds and all that sort of stuff. So to make it successful and to make it integrated, I think we have to provide services for all people, including young and old. So that would include, fairgrounds, that would include parks, and that would also include, monkey gyms and all that sort of stuff. And again, the children would love to go see the tractor pull and all the other stuff. And although I'm been accused of being an incurable optimist, I would like to actually see if we could get a rodeo here. We call it the Kawartha Rodeo, but I'm not promising that. I'm just saying it would certainly be nice. I'm a big rodeo fan and I'm a big horse guy, so maybe that's something we might be able to work together on. But that's, I just to reiterate what you said, yes, we would need that to attract the wide variety of people that are going to come there. We have to satisfy them with providing amenities and services.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Huntley, I don't know whether you got another question, but I see Christian's hand up just to address, I'm sure, one of your points. Go ahead, Christian.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to address Councillor Huntley's point, absolutely, these community amenities will be secured through the subsequent Planning Act applications that would be subject to both staff and council's review through the OPA, the official plan amendment, as well as the site plan agreement that would be required as part of the planning process.
Well done, Christian. That was the answer I was looking for. I guess one last question, if I may.
Councillor Huntley.
With regard to the treatment plant that you're or the Terra plant, I think it's called, or you're putting in there, like, have you had conversations with the airport at this point in terms of servicing them, or is this still kind of a theoretical and conceptual idea of servicing the airport?
Thank you, Councillor. Good question. I don't like the word theoretical because that wouldn't apply that this is as far along as we are. So we have met with the airport. We've met with the airport manager, met with him. I believe his name is Kent, I think his name. We've also met with the superintendent and discussion. We have a meeting with them on the 23rd. We've talked about trying to overcome what I call the barrier of getting to them. I think we're getting somewhat successful. They're, for whatever reason, they, it has always been a little bit difficult getting through to them, but I think they see the light that this is a real possibility. What I'm trying to foster in this, in my discussions with the county and with Peterborough, is this is not just a local play. This is a regional play. And by reaching out to the airport, it's not one thing you're saying, well, we don't want you to service us. Well, I'm not going to force myself onto them. I'm saying I'm available. I'm prepared to extend the olive branch. I'd like to help them out. And I think it would spur, I'm hearing all these issues about they can't get any industrial development, they can't get any employment growth. And I know it's going to cost $25 million for them to bring it in from Peterborough, which makes no sense at all. Why would they not work with a local person here and stop talking about this county versus that county? Let's start talking about regional diversification. Let's talk about, and maybe I'm an optimist again here, I would like to work with Peterborough as a team to say, how do we work this together? How can we make this happen? How can we stop talking about, not my backyard sort of stuff and talk about regional growth? And that's where I'm hoping this will go in discussions with the airport. I'm thinking that if I can provide the servicing in there, there's all sorts of developers around that could actually bring much needed industrial developments. Again, this project is a Kickstarter to allow those things to happen. But again, it does require that MZO to make it happen. But to answer your question, yes, we've started discussions and we've got a very detailed meeting with the steering committee on the 23rd of December. I begged for it sooner. I even wanted it before this meeting so I could have more news, but that's the earliest date I could get.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Christian.
If I'd just like to add another point I found interesting when coming on board this is that the Peterborough Airport recently expanded the runway to permit the landings and takeoffs for larger aircraft such as the Boeing 737 and the A320 series. And should the MZO be advanced, especially for all components of this development, we have a situation where now we have these discount airlines that are flying across the country for very, very affordable fares. And I think Peterborough Airport would definitely be one of those destinations. And if this revitalization is advanced by council, then it would certainly be a development that moves in lockstep with these future destination type venues, for example, that is being proposed here today.
I wanted to add, as well as Mayor, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to mention that we also met with Stephen Wright, who's the airport, I believe is the chair as well.
Very good. Councilor Huntley, sorry, was there an additional question after that?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, I guess just along those lines, just to be perfectly clear, the offer to the city of Peterborough and the Peterborough Airport is literally an olive branch that the servicing is available. If they so decide that they don't wish the services and they wish to go their own way, the project by no means, in my understanding, is certainly not contingent upon providing that pipe, but literally it's as you said, Mr. Weldon, it's to look at it as a regional approach to provide servicing for the better good for the entire region, but by no means is this project contingent upon it.
Yes.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Graham.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Yeah, I've got a lot of issues. I fully support the Kawartha Downs and the expansion and the the economic development opportunities there, and I think that's fantastic. Where I start to meander away from any sort of consideration that's viable is the amount and size and scope of the housing component to this. It seems as though we're trying to get the growth that we weren't going to be even remotely needing to consider to solve in 2041 to 2051 in 2026. And, there's a myriad of implications, not all bad either. I don't mean to say that, but it's just a substantial endeavor and a substantial transition of escalating the development and growth in the plans that we're, well along the way in making as to how we're going to manage that. So I have huge concerns in our ability to manage that effectively and understanding and navigating that process. I think any discussion about servicing the airport is so astronomically premature that, it might be an opportunity, but, I just don't see the airport as this utopia expansion opportunity that other people like to speak of it as because of the environmental sensitivities around all of those lands. But also, and maybe selfishly, there are a lot of employment areas that I would be more interested in servicing long before we ever got to expanding one pipe for one purpose to one airport. And, that water from the well that is going to be provided and treated and served by Nuterra, any sort of facility like that, that's township water. And that's an asset that we need to manage effectively for the purposes of the township, first and foremost. And if there can be regional benefits, so be it. But every time I just hear the airport uttered in this conversation, to me, it seems so premature as to, you know, the amount of work and due diligence that would need to be done in order to even discuss that, to me, it's almost inappropriate. But I understand the catalyst for it based on the attention that subject provides. But I guess one of the questions I had to start is, based on the location of the plant that you're discussing in the maps you provided, how does that servicing get from that area over and through the environmentally sensitive lands between the housing and the plant?
It would go up Highway 28, come up and around.
So does it follow, like, I'm assuming it wouldn't go through and underneath the racetrack, it would go sort of around the backside to 28 and then up Moore Drive, is that correct?
Well, again, it would have to respect all the environmental setbacks that were there. I mean, there's a possibility of it going just to the north of the track there and going across to 28 and then servicing up on Moore Avenue, Moore Drive. So we would not be looking at this point to be going through the wetlands because they're protected.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't see that in any of the planning. So a couple more questions if I can, Mayor.
Okay.
All right. Based on sort of the stage and sort of the newness, I mean, we just received this not too long ago, and I understand there's only been the one meeting, I believe, with township staff about, you know, what is a fairly extensive project and a huge, you know, adjustment to the growth plan that we've been discussing and building for the last few years. How much flexibility is there for the composition of the plans, you know, less maybe, and I mean, not just from a residential standpoint, but also there might be, you know, a fair amount of feedback that might be on offer from, you know, the various consultations and efforts that we've done from a recreation standpoint, but also, you know, just the basic needs of the community. How much flexibility is there within some of the lesser structural components to the plan at this point from a Robson's perspective? Understanding the motivation is to obviously bring people to the venue.
Well, as I say, thank you, Councillor. It's a comprehensive development, and the issue is, and I understand where your concerns are, but the issue from our perspective is the commercial development is not a moneymaker. And so what we're saying, and I'm very transparent with this, we can't make this happen without the residential. Mm-hmm. So if the residential is going to be cut back, it makes the development of the rest of the facility very questionable, because mm-hmm. we feel that we're providing an employment facility, we're increasing the tax base, we're doing stuff. But it doesn't make sense if we're going to be, you know, if we were to be cut back on the residential, then the whole project is put into limbo. So what, you know, we're saying that the residential is justified because of all the investment and the infrastructure that we're putting in. As far as your comment on the airport, by all means, I agree with Mayor McFadden. We're not forcing ourselves onto the airport. It was an olive branch to sort of work with the region. If there are bigger priorities out there that Cavan Monaghan wants us to focus on, servicing industrial lands, by all means, we're okay with that. We'll take our direction from you, but we just felt that it was a good initiative to work with the airport. We thought it may get some cooperation. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's not needed, and maybe it's unnecessary. But it was only an olive branch, basically talking about regional cooperation. So again, I'm coming back to your first question, which is flexibility. There's always a little bit of flexibility, but to sort of dramatically alter the plan and change it and say, well, I like this, but no, none of that. I think it's something we can talk to staff and to members and to yourselves. But I think our plan is fairly well established in terms of what we provide the community and what we're asking for. And again, I'm not trying to be anything other than transparent to say one comes with the other, because it's a huge investment to undertake that. The commercial redevelopment, which we think provides really good tax base and tax incentives and fiscal certainty over the next number of years. And I don't see it as predatory on the other. I think it's complementary to Millbrook. I see it as expanding what the choices of housing and also for commercial development in the area. I don't see us doing anything other than building on it. And as Mayor McFadden said, we're not taking it away. It'll be added onto the growth plan. So it's not something that we're looking to bypass or to do anything quicker. It's just without this process, it'll never happen. That's all, I guess, what I'm saying.
No, and I should clarify. I don't think of it as predatory on pre-existing growth things. It's just like I said. I think I tried to make that point earlier, so I'll clarify. Is that I just think it's a bit of a leap or maybe almost a time travel, so to speak, of where we had forecasted the timing of that growth to occur. It's coming about 15 years or 20 years earlier than what we had initially forecasted. So getting my mind around how that impacts the plan and our growth moving forward, because it definitely disrupts, let's use a tech word, what the sort of the scale and those sorts of plans are. I guess, so one of the other sort of maybe one of my final questions is, and I just want it to be equivocally clear and on the record, because when I read the documents and even throughout the course of the presentation, Mr. Walden, I just want to be clear that when you say phase one and we talk about that the redevelopment of the Kawartha Downs lands will be done prior to any of the housing construction. I just want that to be clear, because I felt like at certain times that's very clear in some of the language used, but then at other times there's discussion about, I think, and I'm trying to remember your words specifically, that once it's commenced or once it's begun, well, that's different than once it's completed. And I had concerns or questions about that because of obviously the extent of the servicing, whether modular or not, that will be required for moving forward. I think I didn't understand how you could create that much capacity before having any of those sorts of residential components online. But that's a portion of, unless it's going to be just the modular required for the servicing for the economic development area or the Kawartha Downs lands first, and then modulars after the fact for the residential component. So I just want to be equivocally clear as to how that sort of process will move forward as you're proposing it.
So Councillor, again, another good question, and I apologize for any confusion. Commercial has to start first. It has to be done first. I am not doing residential until the commercial development is underway and mostly completed. I don't know how long it'll take. For example, if the hotel is slated for, if it's supposed to be 100 units and I haven't got the other 100 units done, I would like to know that after we've started the concert and we've done the soccer and we've done a number of different I would like to know that within a reasonable period of time, I could start the residential. There's no intent to sort of bypass the process and start residential first. As you can see with the servicing it makes a lot more sense to service the existing facility than it does to bring it all the way up to Highway 28. And I'll need the municipal approvals to be able to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, it makes perfect sense from a programming point of view, but also from a development point of view and also from the township's point of view, that we focus on creating the jobs. Let's get the jobs there, and then when the housing will come when the jobs are there. So let's get the jobs. Let's do the servicing for the track. Let's get the soccer fields in there. Let's work with the nonprofits. I mean, what I haven't mentioned is all the work we're doing with the nonprofits and so forth, and they're supporting the community events for soccer and all these other things. So again, that'll be the number one focus is on the commercial development. And I believe Mayor and Council that we're happy to actually discuss that as part of our development application moving forward.
Thank you.
Richard. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Was that it?
Yep, that's all I got right now.
And I guess just for clarification, maybe from staff, whether it's Mr. Hancock or Mr. Conley, with regards to the phasing, those are all aspects that can be worked into the development agreement, is my understanding. We're doing so, we did so in phase one of Tower Hill and certainly in Tower Hill North.
Through Chair to Council, yes, we would certainly from a planning perspective in terms of development, it's typical and it's the type of thing we'd like to see is the phasing of that. Perhaps Mr. Hancock wants to weigh in.
Yeah, I think Mr. Mayor, as through to you to Council, typically phasing and the timelines are set out in your development agreements. So that is the same as we did have in Millbrook phase 1, 1A, 1B.
Very good. And maybe when it comes to the growth projections overall to 2051, I know it seems like a long way off, but having dealt with the planning process, it's also a long way off as well. So in all due respect, I don't see Millbrook being built out anytime quick. And I know those are projections and it's not evenly spaced throughout those 30 years. But recognizing the amount of time it's taken just to do Tower Hill South and now Tower Hill North, it will literally be given 5 years before a first shovel hits the ground. And I know we've got others in the queue, but they're going to be a fair number of years downwind before they even get started as well. So I don't see necessarily that it's abrupt stop and then moving over, but collectively it would have to support our 2051 numbers that the county is in the process of applying to us. The last one has to do with the airport, specifically more along the lines of the pipe. And I think we've discussed that, and it's certainly open to further future discussion with the city of Peterborough, whether they're interested or not. But I know the part of that I'm excited about most relative to the agreement to provide servicing that direction is the ability to service lands in that proximity even before you get to the airport, which in a bigger picture could help to address the desperate need for serviced employment land in our region. It's a known quantity. We see it every day when the opportunities come in on our own property that we have. So that to have that option is fantastic, and I can totally appreciate that if the city of Peterborough doesn't wish to participate, it's this project's certainly not contingent upon it. And I will certainly add, I know it's not part of this presentation, but it's the enthusiasm and openness to discussions of additional opportunities to ensure that this becomes a destination for the region is one aspect that I am very impressed with. And I know as recent as this project has come out, and it's only been within the last week that it's gone public, I recognize and can appreciate that you are already entertaining discussions with the Peterborough Petes and the Peterborough Lakers as to a potential future building for them. So I know that that would certainly be exciting as well, and it just continues to build on the destination for the region. That's fantastic news.
Well, Mayor, if I could just, oh, I'm sorry, can I add?
No, go ahead. I was looking for you to provide a response, and I got Deputy Mayor after that. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Weldon.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm not so good with putting my hand up. I forget the little red hand there. I apologize. All I wanted to say was, you know, when we talk about change, this is a big change to Kawartha Downs. And what I want to say is, as a developer, I've been doing it since 1982, I guess is when I started. That's a long time ago. Good development is all about change, but it's about good change, and it's about being a visionary. And so what we're asking you is to be visionaries here. We're not asking you to go beyond what you think is reasonable, but we're asking you to imagine how this place could be and what the development could look like. And yes, it's hard to look at change sometimes, but there is, when people look at things and they say, I don't know how this actually got done, it actually got done because of visionaries. So really what we're talking about here, this is an aggressive, this is optimistic. And as my wife says, I'm an over-optimist. Because why? Because I like to look at things that are visionary and actually project what type of things we could have in Cavan Monaghan. And I think this is, that, you know, when people have a chance to go through it and go through all the proposals, they'll see this is an opportunity to be a visionary and to put something on the map here that everybody will be very, very proud of. That's all I wanted to say was it's hard for people to accept change, but at the sometimes when you look at it, that's the only way things happen is actually by trying to envisage what can happen here and what the opportunities are. I just wanted to leave that with council that this is an opportunity that only comes and I'm hoping we can take advantage of it.
Very good. Thank you, Richard. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yeah, thanks for that, Richard. I appreciate it, and I understand and I agree with the mayor about the enthusiasm. I think we all appreciate, thinking outside of the box when it comes to our area and what we can do to improve it is, I think, what all of us, a part of why all of us ran for this is to try to make improvements in that capacity. So, it's definitely a shiny apple. I mean, it's definitely, there are elements that I think maybe each of us have issues with, but the enthusiasm and appreciation for the effort is definitely there. I guess one of the questions that I have is, an MZO, like forgoing our decision today, well, maybe not forgoing our decision today, but if the MZO isn't supported at the province or doesn't go through, which, I don't know what the circumstance are for that or the timing, etc. But where does that put this development or the reinvestment or the development of, where does that sort of leave you guys are riding the wave of your optimism, I guess? What's plan B in that regard? If any, I'm just curious as to how that might affect or how that would have bearing on moving forward.
Well, again, I'm going to come back to being an incurable optimist. If the MZO is turned down, we need the MZO to make this a reality.
Right.
So if the MZO is turned down, we have to start back from the beginning, really. Mm-hmm. The commercial development doesn't make any sense without the residential part of it. So we would keep trying, but you know, I have to say that we have, while we've been dealing, you know, with Kevin Monaghan, we've also been dealing with the province as well. We feel there's a level of support here, but they come back to us and saying you need to make sure Kevin Monaghan is on site. So it's really in your hands. We think we have support provincially. This is a great thing for tourism. We've had we hosted a number of MPPs locally at a function, and they were very supportive, but it all came back to the request from the local municipality. So we're quite optimistic, and I think it's going to happen, but again, only happens with your support. So if it doesn't happen, then we have to start back at the beginning, and I would go and be depressed for a little while and probably have to start again. So
There you go. No problem.
Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To add to your depression, we have a couple of those topics coming on in the next little while about how long it takes to get through a planning process. And I would suggest that this would not be before a council for at least 15 years if you went, if you didn't have an MZO, because quite frankly, we're 2.5 years in on a redesignation, and we spent 3.5 years looking for fish in a drainage ditch. So I'm well aware of how the planning process works and how it doesn't work. And yeah, to be fair, it would not become before a council for consideration for a very long time. Any other questions from members of council? Kathy, I can see that you are now on. Councillor Moore, any further questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, suggested motion. We essentially have two: motion to support an MZO or a motion to not support an MZO. That would be what's before us today. And I got a hand up from Councillor Moore. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Kathy, or Councillor Moore.
Sorry, I would support that.
Motion to support an MZO moved by Councillor Moore, second. Councillor Belch, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes,
Deputy Mayor Graham,
No.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Richard. Best of luck to the entire team. And
thank you, Councillor. Thank you, members of council. Really, really appreciate your support. I really look forward to working with you. Thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
I'm not depressed, I'm optimistic, and I'm also realistic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Fantastic. Council, I'm going to ask you right now, do you wish to take a brief break before we get into the rest of these delegations, or do you want to plow on through?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. Councillor Moore, you're going to stay on?
I think I'm going to soon leave, Scott.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're just missing Councillor Belch. There we go. We got Councillor Belch. Do we have a clerk? We have a clerk. Okay. Right. We shall continue. 1 second. Our next item on the agenda is item 7.2. Peter Shute from Brookfield Residential regarding the proposed boundary adjustment employment lands opportunity. Ms. Page, I'll let you let Mr. Shute in. I see that he's there. Welcome, Peter.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Pete Shute, and I'm a principal with Brookfield Properties and BPH Developments, Inc. I've asked to be a delegate today to speak to agenda item 13.1, being the employment lands opportunity. I'd like to start today by expressing our company's support and appreciation for both Peterborough County Council's resolution from its November 17th council meeting, as well as Mayor McFadden's original motion, which was the catalyst for these conversations. Our company owns approximately 106 of the 137 hectares, or roughly 3/4 of the land identified in Schedule A of the mayor's original motion as lands that would potentially be transferred from the township to the city. From our perspective, we absolutely support any effort to bring the three municipalities together to work collaboratively towards the negotiation of a memorandum of understanding regarding the potential municipal boundary adjustments and to accommodate new future employment lands opportunity at this location. This concept is consistent with a letter that we sent to the City Council in May of this year. That letter highlighted the shortage of employment land opportunities and promoted that the city work with the township and county council in partnership to bring these same properties forward for purposes of accommodating a large-scale employment opportunity for the benefit of the entire region. Similar to the township and the city, and taking some of the cues from the previous presentation, we've also been at this for a while. Our company's initially invested in Kawartha roughly 15 years ago. And over these last 15 years, we've been very active building communities in most municipalities in Durham region, which has provided us with a strong indication of the growth trends and market interests that we see extending from Durham to both the township and the city. With the immense growth Durham has been experiencing, in addition to the completion of Highway 407 East to the 35-115, our rationale as to why we invested in the township originally is continually reinforced by these external pressures, pressures which are simply looking for a local solution to accommodate them. We've watched over the years as significant effort has been applied to seeking out opportunities for collaboration and potential partnership between the city and the township. You've come close on a number of previous occasions, and we're hopeful this time around that there's a strong enough interest and commitment from all sides to see this concept through. We do have one ask, and that is that if this concept receives the support from Township Council today, and we certainly hope that it does, and that as the negotiating teams are being established to represent the city, the township, and the county, that consideration be given to providing the private landowners affected by this proposal with the seat at the table. We believe that we would offer a helpful perspective and resources to the effort. Our company has the benefit of being one of the largest community builders in North America, with a breadth of experience from many jurisdictions and across all sectors of community development, including employment, industrial, commercial, retail, and residential development. We've experienced many situations where neighboring municipalities have chosen to work together for a common benefit, and we believe that some of that experience would be of benefit in this situation. We'd like to be there with you guys. So with that, I'll wrap up simply by reiterating that we do greatly appreciate Mayor McFadden bringing his original motion forward a few weeks ago. We're encouraged by the strong support this motion received, both by county and city councils over the last couple of weeks. We think you've got an amazing opportunity here with serviceable land to create the types of jobs that you're looking for and that we've heard in previous conversations. And we appreciate your time, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you, Pete. Any questions from members of council? None? I know those particular items will be up for discussion later, Pete, so stand by. They're later on in the agenda, and I'm sure there'll be lots of conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you
Can
very
I get a
much.
motion to receive the delegation? Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, record a vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Our next delegation is Tom Phillips. Unfortunately, Tom Phillips will not be able to join us today, so I will move on to the next item, which is 7.4. Richard Whitney, broker, Century 21 United Realty. I'll wait for the Madam Clerk to bring in Mr. Whitney. There is Richard. Welcome, Richard. I see your picture, Richard, and I don't hear you. You're still muted.
Is that better?
That is much better, Mr. Whitney. We can hear you loud and clear.
Shall I start, Mayor McFadden?
Absolutely.
First of all, thank you. Thank you to all of you for allowing me to make comments today. I tend to get passionate sometimes, and so if that happens and my voice gets a little louder, please don't take it personally. It's my character. And I want to make a couple of comments. I'm a commercial real estate broker, currently with Century 21 United Realty. And for 25 years, I've been trying to attract business investors to come to this community. And by the community, I call that Peterborough County. Peterborough County is my home. I live in Peterborough. I have clients in various parts of the county. But someone taught me a long time ago to accept responsibility for my sphere of influence. And I can honestly say, in watching Townships, County, City of Peterborough make decisions along the way, the most progressive, and I would say this to all faces in any room, that has made efforts to care about the entire population in Peterborough County is demonstrated by Cavan Monaghan Township. And your township has, for as long as I've been swinging at economic development, has, and led by your mayor, is had the attitude of how do we make something happen instead of coming up with all the reasons why we can't make something happen. And that is the difference of the future of this county. Somebody, as the eloquent Richard Weldon spoke, and the scriptures support, without a vision, you perish. And somebody's got to look down the road and say, what's coming? And what are the opportunities before us? And how do we champion those? Instead of coming up with all the reasons why we can't do something to make it happen, we need to come up with a unified effort at all three tiers of government, and then bringing the provincial players into the queue. And so, as in the decision that you just approved with Mr. Weldon, you shaved 15 to 20 years off of a process. And the economic impact of that kind of a decision is worth billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to not only Cavan Monaghan, but to this entire region. Kudos to you. I want to thank you because you've given me a hope for Peterborough County that I have lost. And I'm 70 years of age, and you put a bounce in my step because this region now has a hope, because instead of all the negatives and the naysays, you're saying, okay, let's get at this, work through all the details, but with an end game in mind. I'm telling you, you've stirred me again. My wife might not like that, but you've stirred me again. I represent a landowner in that group of lands that was proposed to the city of Peterborough. And we championed an economic impact study by Dr. Tom Phillips That's been sent to all of you, and I'm so sorry that Dr. Phillips couldn't present today. He's a brilliant, well-educated, knowledgeable man, and he's identified the cost of indecision. And I'll give you an example. 700 jobs are created out of 100 new housing starts. That's $35 million a year, just in wages, never mind the rest of it. Millions of dollars in property taxes and development charges, and on and on. And somebody's got to have a look at the future. In watching the city council decision on the proposal put forth by your mayor, you talk about an olive branch and a solution. People don't understand what goes on when huge international corporations want to come to this community, and councils and economic development people don't even hear about it. It's people like me and developers who want to do something and have a vision, and then they get hit with a delay and all the reasons why they can't do it now. And the official plan that's been approved by the city of Peterborough and going to the province, those employment development lands will not be available for a suitor to come to Peterborough and put a shovel in the ground for anywhere between 10 and 20 years. And the lands identified may not even be suitable or available when brought to scrutiny. And so that brings me to what I've put forth today. One of the items was I have an opportunity that came to me, and the last communications was 6:12 p.m. on November 26th. Somebody wants between 10 and 25 acres, 20 acres. And they want a minimum of 3,000 to 5,000 office square feet and 6,000 to 10,000 square feet of warehouse. The number of office employees will be between 30 and 40. The non-office employees will be between 200 and 250. The occupancy date, they love it now, but the drop date is spring, summer 2023. And they are a AAA national client. And guess what? There is not one chunk of land in Peterborough County right now that can meet that need. I asked Dr. Phillips, a renowned, the guy of the report that you have a copy of, I asked him, I said, what's the economic impact of this opportunity that's before us? He said $50 to $60 million a year. And over a 20-year period, $1 to $1.2 billion. And that is just one of 100 opportunities that come our way to this community. And we get all the song and dance, the reasons why we can't make a decision, get unified, and do something about it. And the solution is simple. Today, using Richard Weldon's scenario, and thank you, Mr. Weldon. One day I hope to meet you. Thank you so much. And that it's Mr. Deputy Mayor Matthew said, that's a shining apple. Yes, it's a beautiful shining apple. And there's a bucket full of shining apples that want to come this way. And the solution is for the three tiers of government, the province, to get together in a room and say, how do we fast track this stuff and seize these opportunities so that everybody has a bright future? And I was reading, and I'll close on this. I was reading in your community profile, beautiful. Cavan Monaghan is open for business with a mix of industrial, agricultural, commercial activities, and would be more receptive to any development proposals. One would certainly have it all right here. And then going to your mission statement, the Township of Cavan is committed to delivering responsive and cost-effective services that provide for the economic, social, environmental well-being of our ratepayers now and in the future. And I listened to Mr. Weldon suggest that he'll pull the checkbook out to take care of the services. And just for the record, so will Brookfield and my client who owns the other portion of those proposed lands. in Mayor McFadden's proposal. And the vision. Cavan Monaghan is a strong, sustainable rural community. We celebrate, protect, promote our unique history and natural heritage, and value the contribution and interests of all ratepayers in building a prosperous future. I don't know how to say it. Cavan Monaghan is the only bright light in Peterborough County that's embracing the new technologies, new industries, new jobs, new people with new ideas. And please give this old guy some more hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney. I must say your passion for the region is both motivational and contagious. So thank you for that delegation, and I will open it up to questions. Okay, we do not have any questions. Once again, Mr. Whitney.
Mr. Belch has a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Belch.
For you, Mayor, just wondering to Mr. Whitney, our offer to the City Council, they turned it down 6-5. I'm wondering if you were aware of that.
I was under the impression that there was a motion in there to still meet with Cavan Monaghan to see if there was a way to work through there was a schedule brought forth by the mayor suggesting that you meet and all three tiers meet and bring in someone from the province and try and have a resolution brought forth by March 1st, 2022. I may have heard that wrong, but that was my understanding. And it would be a wonderful thing. And in all the things that you're doing as a township, carry on. And one of the advantages of that particular concept brought forth by Mayor McFadden is that, again, if all tiers and the province and with the developers got into a room this could be fast tracked by the province. And so that all of a sudden we've got, the 300 acres or whatever it is ready. And because services are within 300 meters and you have developers who are willing to foot the bill now, is somehow hopefully with all the wisdom in the room and with the focus and motive, this could happen quickly. And good management, I've learned this over the years, is there are rules and processes in place, but a good manager says, okay, how do we fast track this? Because the cause is greater than the process. And so I believe that's my understanding, Councillor Belch.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Councillor Belch. Thank you, Richard. Any further questions for Mr. Whitney? None, I'll entertain a motion to receive that delegation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Whitney. Our next item is 8.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held November 15th, 2021. Motion to adopt those minutes. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, the minutes from boards and committees. I'm going to do the three together unless somebody wants them broken apart. Good. Okay, minutes for items 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3. Motion for those minutes. Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
I apologize, through Mayor McFadden. Were you trying to combine 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3 together?
Yeah,
Yes.
did I just mess you up?
9.1 we have to approve as presented, and 9.2 and 3 are received. So I'd like us just to do one motion at a time. So let's start with 9.1.
Not a
MVP.
problem. We got a mover and a seconder. We'll use the same ones.
Can you
Madam Clerk?
confirm those for me, Mayor McFadden? I apologize.
Yes, I will. Who's our mover? Deputy Mayor Graham. Who's our seconder? Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, record a vote. This is
Thank you,
for item
Councillor
9.1.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 9.2, motion for those minutes. Oh, I thought Kyle was popping on there to be a mover, but I'm going to have to skip him for now and go to Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Huntley for mover and seconder on 9.2.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 9.3, Millbrook Downtown BIA Board of Management minutes meetings of October 7th. Motion for those minutes. Councillor Belch
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, record a vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Moving along to number 10, reports. 10.1, report bylaw 2021-01, draft noise bylaw update. Mr. Phillips and Ms. Page.
Thank you, Mayor. I had to turn my video on quick because you're moving so fast. I had to keep ahead of you there. I just want to start off by thanking Ms. Page and Inspector Lyons for their help in reviewing the report and the bylaw. I believe we have Inspector Lyons here today to speak to any enforcement questions or any other questions that you might have on that end.
Very good. Questions from members
The
of
regular
council?
council, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you can go through it. I
Oh,
think.
sorry, I thought you were making a direction, just to have a motion for him to speak after this. I don't know if you need to do that.
Yes, we do. That's what Madam Clerk is shaking her head yes for. And we have a motion from Councillor Huntley and Councillor Belch. Good. Madam Clerk, recorded vote. We'd like to welcome John Lyons to our meeting.
Councillor
Okay,
Belch,
thanks.
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes,
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
motion is approved. Welcome, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So I can still just speak to the report, and then I'll leave it for John just to speak to any questions on the enforcement part. At the regular council meeting of October 18th, council did direct staff to review the noise bylaw and report back. Ms. Page, myself, and Inspector Lyons have discussed where we're at with the bylaw, any issues we've had, and how it's working today. We do feel, for the most part, the bylaw has worked well, continues to work well, although there are some minor changes that we need to make to address a couple of recent issues. The biggest change we've made is music. So currently in the bylaw, there's an exemption of 9 to 9 for music. We identified it previously as the BIA area. That didn't prove to work very well, as that's a very large area and takes in a large residential population. So we have proposed to change that to a more geographical area, just being the downtown core. So we've proposed in the new bylaw to change it to King Street East from the limits of Tupper Street, westerly to Union Street and Hay Street. They are one geographic line, but they are two different streets on opposite sides of the road. A couple other changes that we made were we added the Millbrook Annual Fair into the exemptions and some filming exemptions, just the wording there, basically any approved film. Any other changes we made were some fairly minor wording ones. Inspector Lyons did suggest that we add in there to clarify that the bylaw is a 24-hour bylaw. That's been called into question a couple times. Barring that, I do know there will be some questions on the music portion. I don't know if you want to lead off and speak to anything, Inspector Lyons, or if we want to just leave it to questions now.
Do you want to speak to it first, Inspector Lyons, or do you want the council to ask the question so you can answer them?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I can, and thank you, Your Worship, and through you, and thank you, and good afternoon to yourself and to councillors and to staff. And I just first off want to point out that I want to thank both Cindy and Kyle for their tremendous work on this and for their meetings that we had together. It was awesome and it was very fruitful. So just regarding a couple of issues, and mainly around music and without getting into venue specifics, but more so in an overview of enforcement and looking at the bylaw, how it would be applied, quite essentially, it comes down to if there isn't an exemption given by council, then we will be dealing with any complaint we receive, much like we would from any other place, space, depending on, who is calling in and what the reasons are being called in for. We would attend, we would investigate, and deal with the situation as it comes forward. If the venue that we were dealing with in particular has been doing this for years and has, gives that explanation to the officers in attendance, but they don't have proof of giving that exemption, we'd start off by doing education. So sorry if I just walk through it. We would attend, we would do an educational piece that the bylaw is in effect 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to make them aware. Because a lot of times people think it's 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. That's kind of the go-to. So we would make them well aware of that. That becomes a stamp then moving forward, where we've issued a warning, and any subsequent, the officers have discretion, but we encourage them to issue fines after that person or venue has been provided with that first educational training, and that is part of enforcement, is education. So that's how we would, as we walk through that bylaw, if we attended at any residence or venue, we would take that same approach. We would do that educational piece. Again, that becomes the stamp, if you want to call it that moving forward, if we receive further complaints, the officers do have the ability and would be encouraged to lay a fine. If it was something that was going on and ongoing, there is the ability to increase that fine structure by issuing a Part 3 summons, which would compel the person or persons or whatever the designation is of the venue to attend court, and these could instill a higher fine. So hopefully that addresses it in a general overview. That's essentially how the bylaw would be delivered, I suppose.
Very good. Questions from members of council? Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Officer Lyons. I guess it's the whole thing is based on fairly discretionary of your officers, I believe, is it not? Like if it's, I think the wording somewhere in there is, deemed to sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but
disturb by the lead?
Deemed to disturb, like it's so subjective. How do your officers handle that? Because in some cases, I mean, there may be music there and it's pretty, to somebody it's offensive and loud, but to everybody else it isn't. Like, how does that balance out?
So I'll give you an example of that if you would just follow me with this. So you, I, and the mayor attend a concert, and the mayor may find it way too loud. You may find it way too soft. I might find it just right. It's kind of sounding like a story that we all know as children. and it's very comparable, but it is very subjective. You're right. It's ambiguous. The actual, it's called noise likely to disturb. Now, in the bylaw itself, there are some things that are very well spelled out that are deemed to be noises likely to disturb. So those ones in particular they're not hard to address in that sense. But otherwise, what we would do is we defer to the complainant. So again, because although it does have an exemption within the bylaw for officers to be disturbed and could be a complainant, we would defer to the complainant that's called in, because who would better be able to describe it than that person? And again, it really, to me, it doesn't matter what that level of that noise is. If it's causing you the inability to sleep, to do whatever, to live in your home and to be able to carry on the normal things that you would do, that's your opinion of noise likely to disturb. So that would, the officers would say to the complainant, well, we really require you, in order for this to go forward, we would have to encourage that person to say that they would go to court in order to testify as to what they heard and as to why it was disturbing to them. And then, of course, it would be up to a justice of the peace to make that determination. So it isn't so much the officer's opinion when they arrive as to whether it's noisy or not. Again, save and except for those things that are deemed to be likely to disturb. It does put some of the onus on the person calling in order for that complaint to be furthered.
Very good. Further questions? Councillor Belch, did I see a hand?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, to Constable Lyons. If it is put to the complainant and they say, oh, I'm not interested in appearing at court, does it just get dropped?
No, there'd be a record of it. And sorry, again, through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be recorded. There would be still that there would be evidence of the call in our call queue. But as far as the enforcement goes, that may not have been acted upon because let's say it's an after the fact situation. When the officers arrive, they don't hear anything. So prior to the officer's arrival, and this happens quite often where, somebody will the neighbors will be yelling at each other and I'm calling the cops on you. And so before we arrive there, the noise is turned down. So the officers get there and it's peaceful. So there would probably not be any enforcement in the sense of it. Now, when I say that, there would still be education. We'd still go and visit the person. But if the complainant said, this is really, really bothering us and I want them charged, then we would then act on their behalf and we would say to them, okay, well, you're going to have to come to court in order for you to be able to, to tell what the situation was at the time. And if they're agreeable, then we will and can proceed with a charge.
Very good. Any further questions from members of council or anything more specific on the noise bylaw before us? Thank you very much, Inspector Lyons. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Thank you, Ms. Page. Can I get a motion to receive that report and accept the recommendation? Hold on. Provide staff direction. Sorry, Ms. Page.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to the rest of council as well as yourself, if there's no comments, and it would be to receive the report and have staff bring back the noise bylaw at the next meeting.
All right, that is
upon legal review. Upon legal review, I apologize. We would like to have it legally reviewed.
I will entertain a motion of exactly what the clerk just said. We got Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Thank you, Inspector Lyons.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
And Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Once again, thank you, Inspector Lyons. And Mr. Phillips, you're not done yet, so you're back up on the next one. 2000. Oh no, let's you are done. Thank you. You're the other KP. It's user fees and charges. Somehow you got tagged with it, but no, that's the same initials as Ms. Pope. Report Finance 2021-18, 2022 user fees and charges bylaw. Ms. Pope, Mr. Phillips almost did your report for you.
Almost. Thank you very much. Through you, Mayor, to all of council, I have before you the user fees and charges to be effective on January 1st, 2022. It is, January 1st, 2022. It is a consolidated report for all departments with the various changes to the bylaw. This is before council for approval today.
Very good. Questions from members of council? Seeing none. Motion then to receive the report and accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Ms. Pope. Next item, 10.3, report planning 2021-61, 918 Highway 7A, Duque zoning bylaw amendment. Ms. Ellis?
Mayor McFadden, members of council, planning report 2021-61 is before you today with the recommendation that bylaw number 2021-71 be approved to amend bylaw number 2018-58 as amended with regard to lands at 918 Highway 7A and part of Lot 12, concession 9 of the Cabin Ward. I'll just give you a little brief history. If you remember, we've dealt with this at a couple of previous occasions. The last time we talked about it, council directed staff to contact the Peterborough Public Health and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and also to get a legal opinion about the zoning bylaw amendment for the property at 918 Highway 7A. Staff has undertaken that work and has received written correspondence from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. We have the required legal opinion, and based upon that information, we've also received confirmation from Peterborough Public Health. There is no record of the sewage disposal system for 912 Highway 7A, either at their office or our office. It may predate the keeping of records. But having said all that, with the information received to date, staff is recommending that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved after consideration of that background information and a review of the policy landscape that we operate within today in terms of the Townships official plan, Peterborough County official plan, and the provincial policy statement.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Belch.
For you, Mayor, on the recommendation, it's saying regard to lands 918 7A, but down in the actual body of the overview, it's listing it as 912 Highway 7A.
Through you, Mayor McFadden.
Go ahead, Ms. Ellis.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to members of council. So the application applies to 918 Highway 7A. The issue with the existing sewage disposal system was on property at 912 Highway 7A. So the two properties abut, and the issue is the distance between the well on the property at 918 and the sewage disposal system on the property at 912.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ellis. Any other questions from members of council? If not, it has answered, it appears, the concerns that council raised at the last meeting. And with that, I would move the recommendation, receive the report and accept the recommendation. Move. Councillor Huntley is the mover. Do we have a seconder? I will second it. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
I had to be first, yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
And Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Our next item is report planning 2021-62 Veltri and Son Limited, Coldbrook Drive Part Lot Control Exemption Bylaw. Lots 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, and blocks 14 and 15, Plan 45M-59, and part of blocks 19 and 20, Plan 9M-733. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor McFadden. Through Mayor McFadden to members of council, planning report 2021-62 is before you today with the recommendations that bylaw number 2021-72 be approved to temporarily remove part lot control from lots 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, Plan 45M-259, and part of blocks 19 and 20, Plan 9M-733, as permitted under Section 50, subsection 7 of the Planning Act. And secondly, that bylaw number 2021-72 be forwarded to Peterborough County for approval. Just one comment on this report, just so you know, this will be the last part lot control exemption bylaw before you today for the Nina Court extension or the Veltri subdivision.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Any questions from members of council? Hopefully not, because you can't do anything anyways. This one's going through as is. It's already built. Motion to receive the report and accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, refer to vote.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
And Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Next report,
Thank you.
planning 2021-63, third quarter activity report, building, economic development and planning. Mr. Conley.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, to the rest of Council. What you have before you is Planning Report 2021-63, which is the third quarter activity report. Recommendation is that Council receive Report Planning 2021-63, third quarter activity report, building, economic development and planning for information. Your Worship, and to Council, that this is the third quarter reporting with respect to, we provide a quarterly update with respect to activity on building permit activity, economic development, as well as planning inquiries. There's some quite a bit of detailed information here, but one of the things I wanted to highlight is that although our number of building permits is down, we are on track this year for what we had projected in terms of building permit fees. We had proposed or projected 200,000. We're just under tracking just under 189,000 year to date. We expect that we should be able to meet that. From planning inquiries, it's been a very busy real estate in terms of development overall within the township. Our numbers are higher than this time last year in terms of collectively for the 3 quarters. We're around 366 land use inquiries versus 318 of last year. Again, last year was a very busy year on top of as compared to 2019. So that continues, and that again, one of the things I would like Council to appreciate is that when we have properties that come on the market, it's not uncommon that we would have somewhere in the order of 10 or 12 inquiries with that specific property. So it's definitely a good sign in terms of economic activity within the township. The concern there is that from a staff perspective, it does take a lot of time to be able to respond to those. I did just sort of want to highlight those inquiries. It's still steady. There's a breakdown on page 3 of the report with respect to the activities or the inquiries with respect to the Cavan, Millbrook, and North Monaghan wards. So that gives you an idea of the level of activity and the type of interest that's been there. And again, just wanted to identify that this year continues the same sort of heated market from a real estate perspective and economic development as not only 2020 but also 2019. So if you have any questions whatsoever, I'm happy to answer those.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Conley. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, motion then to receive that report. Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, 10.6, report planning 2021-64. Update status report 1066 Sire Line. Mr. Conley, it's been flowing along really good. What's the good news?
Is that a setup, Your Worship?
Set up for about 5 months extra.
Well, we're hoping it's not going to be that. So through Your Worship to Council, you have before you Planning Report 2021-64, and that the recommendation is that Council receive Planning Report 2021-64, update status report 1066 Sire Line for information. As all of you as Council are aware, and I'm probably growing tired of seeing me, is that every council meeting and even special council meetings provide an update. The one thing to add here is that we were tracking nicely towards the idea of having this before council for a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw and the OP amendment, at least the draft one, in discussions most recently with with not only the county but the Ministry of Transportation. The traffic impact study, which was a study that's identified earlier in the process, at least from my interpretation and the conversations to date, was that in the absence of a proposal, which there is no proposal for the land holdings on Sire Line, it is that along with stormwater management reports that study could follow. Based on recent discussions with the Ministry of Transportation and the county, it is seen as essential in order to go forward. So what we have done is retain a traffic consultant, appropriate traffic consultant, to look at the traffic impact study, finalizing the scope of work with that. And also in terms of the costs that are there, in terms of being able, we have those costs set aside. Council was smart enough to have identified that those costs would be there. And essentially what's going to happen is it will cause a bit of a delay, probably a couple months into the early part of 2022. I don't have that exact date, but I will confirm that in my next status update, which will be December 20th. Again, if there are any questions of council whatsoever, happy to answer those.
Very good. Questions from members of council? Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Chair. So you say the financial impact is none at this time, but obviously the traffic study report is going to have a cost to it So how much is this late decision to have us do a traffic study going to cost us?
Of course, through you, Chair, to Councillor Huntley, my apologies for not filling in that. I should have provided that, and that's an oversight on my part. We've got a quote on this, and essentially the work to be done in terms of the traffic impact study should be around $8,000 less HST. So that's what the impact would be. And I think one of the things I probably owe council, and I'll certainly commit to for the next update, is provide a breakdown of the costs of the studies to date, the costs incurred to that, so that council has an idea of the amount of level of effort, resources that have been invested so far with respect to the studies to bring this to this point. So I do apologize for that oversight, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you.
Further questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Graham.
Through you, Mayor. I guess I think we're all frustrated by when we learned of this in our own times. And I understand there's not much in the way of recourse that we can do. I just want to clarify it in sort of simple terms, maybe for my own benefit, probably for my own benefit, is that, we were told one thing with regards to, that a traffic impact study wasn't necessary because there wasn't a final understanding as to what the composition or contents of the final property was going to entail. And then somewhere between then and now, despite there not being any evolution in what is going to be composed or potentially composed of that property, there's been a catalyst that's required this study to be done without any of that knowledge, correct?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Graham, yes.
Okay, so are traffic impact studies that have no basis or foundation of what is going to be composed of the property that the impact study is being done on, are those more or less complicated or more or less costly than the ones that are done for a specific purpose or a specific analysis?
So through you, Chair, to Councillor Graham and the rest of council, my understanding, I'm not an expert in terms of traffic impact studies, but from my understanding would be that in the absence of a specific proposal, but we do have an idea of the zoning that's being proposed, the way in which this is positioned, and I can understand where the Ministry of Transportation, even the county would have advised this, is to look at what would be required of what are the permitted uses in the zoning that we're looking for, and this is rural employment. So the intention there would be to look at how could we look at what study would be anticipating the type of flows for the type of uses that are allowed or permitted within that zoning. And the idea is that if there is an advantage in the time that's being spent up front, is that this will get the property that much more shovel ready when a proposal does come forward.
Thank you.
Just a question with regards to the proposed zoning. I know council hasn't had a discussion with regards to what zoning it is that we wish to have on that particular. I would assume that we would be making it as broad as possible, given that we don't know what the uses are. So what zoning is being proposed? Are we entering into something here with a traffic impact study whereby we're limiting ourselves to future decision?
Through your worship, no, the intention here is to look at the maximum amount. Again, the idea is if we're going to do this once, we'll do it only once. And again, my apologies for even having to come forward with this delay, but the intention is that the planning justification and the zoning being pursued would be allowing the broadest number of and type of land uses within the rural employment that we're looking for. So from that standpoint, the advice being given from MTO and from the county is, if you're looking at the scope of work, would be anticipation of what would be the, I guess, the type of development that would be allowed within that broadest range. And then that would define the type of, as a bit of a surrogate to the type of use that would be permitted. And then again, the intention there would be, that would be at the end that we have property, and certainly from the township's perspective, that's more shovel ready in this quote unquote. So again.
Very good. I'm going to do I'll do a simple motion to simply receive this at first, and then I'll have a second motion. So motion to receive the report, Deputy Mayor Graham. Councillor Huntley, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
And Councillor Belch.
Yes.
With council's indulgence, I'd appreciate the opportunity to send a letter on behalf of council to the Minister of the MTO copying the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, our MPP Laurie Scott, and the Premier, emphasizing our complete disappointment with the lack of full disclosure during a pre-consultation of a requirement for a report from MTO. And given that they didn't provide proper pre-consultation advice, we're stuck with an additional report at the end. And more worrisome is they've moved the goalposts, and now we have a delay in the entire project. Everybody knew what we were doing. We followed all the procedures, and we have a provincial government before us that is emphasizing the importance of jobs, the importance of more homes, all of these great and wonderful things. And at the end of the day, the province blew it. And quite frankly, I'm really perturbed with the fact that they came in with this at the last second. Nothing has changed on our side, and they had full opportunity to make it known to us well in advance. We could have done the study, we could have stayed on target. And as a result of letting us know right at the very end, now we've delayed the whole thing. And I think as small as this particular project may be, I think it's exemplar. It's an example of what's going on within the province. There's no accountability when ministries provide response. There's no accountability when commenting agencies provide response. And at the end of the day, there's nothing. There's no recourse as the frustration that we can see amongst councillors when this happens. And quite frankly, it's got to stop. And I think we need to bring it to the attention of the appropriate ministers and the Premier and our MPP that they need to change the process. So with your indulgence, I would like that summarized in a letter sent to the province, specifically with the individuals that I've mentioned. Madam Clerk, you can make the motion relatively simple, but that will be essentially the contents of my letter. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, I was just waiting for you to call for a vote. So I'll just make it as simple as you just said, that the letter be sent to the province to include the MTO, MMAH, MPP, and the Premier, outlining our disappointment or dissatisfaction with, we can work between town or Conley and our CAO on how we include that verbiage in there.
Absolutely.
As long as we are confident that that's accurate information, Mayor McFadden, then we can move forward with this motion.
Absolutely. We will be using the specific comments that were received as part of the pre-consultation, which are completely in contrary to what ultimately got requested in the end. There are two different things, and that will be the focus of the letter, which is all factual.
Mayor McFadden, would you want us to include the original correspondence followed up by the last correspondence just to show where the inconsistency is? Okay.
Yes. And that we're asking for a response.
You need a mover, Scott?
Yeah, I think our
after we get that.
Do you want me to draft up an official motion, Mayor McFadden? Is that what we want to do here? If we do, then I do want to take a recess to talk with Mr.
Okay.
and John.
Okay. All right. That's fine. All right, everybody, sorry about that. Our wonderful clerk has come up with a motion. Flexibility to provide a response to the province with regards to our dissatisfaction. Madam
Did you
Clerk.
draft a whole letter?
Through you, Mayor McFadden, to members of council, that's exactly what the motion will say, that council directs staff to send a letter to the province, MTO, MMAH, MPP, and the Premier outlining the dissatisfaction and delays in the process at 1066 Sire Line.
Thank you. And sorry, and where we left off, did we have a mover or seconder, or probably not because we didn't have a motion?
No, we will need a move and a seconder for that, Mayor McFadden.
All right, mover, we got Deputy Mayor Graham, seconder. Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes. Motion is approved. Next item, report planning 2021-65, merger agreement and Morton line assumption. Bigelow, Mr. Conley.
Your worship, and through you to council, you have before you planning report 2021-65 merger agreement and Morton line assumption with the recommendations: 1, that council consent to the discharge and release of the merger agreement from the title to lot 1 concession 9 of cabin save and accept part 1 of plan 45R-9731, and 2, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the acknowledgement and direction for the transfer deed of the forest road allowance Morton line, and have this section of Morton line dedicated as public road allowance as described under zoning bylaw 2021-75. As background to this, the township staff, myself, had received a couple of inquiries. One is with respect to a merger agreement. So this is the subject. I'm going to refer to my notes, so I do apologize if I'm looking down more than I would normally. But the subject property was created by a severance in 1993, and as a result, there was an executing merger agreement with the township. At the time, the applicant owned 2 separate conveyable parcels of land separated by a township road allowance. Since then, that road has gone through as a forest road, and what it effectively does is provide a physical separation between the north and the south lots. When this, so as I've identified there, so the merger agreement is registered on title for the property and effectively legally ties the north and south parcels together. When this came to my attention last year, we asked for legal opinion on that. And essentially on page 2 of the report, it said that merger agreements have no statutory basis and do not achieve the intended purpose of legally merging or tying what would otherwise be separately conveyable parcels. So with that, we staff are in the position where we do believe that there's no valid reason for the township to withhold the consent of the deletion of the merger agreement in the subject property. In discussions and through correspondence with legal counsel for the applicant, for the owner of the property, what there was a request is that in looking at this information, they also found that the township hadn't fully accepted or assumed responsibility ownership of that part of Morton line that divided the 2 properties. So as a result, legal counsel for the applicant had requested 2 things. Was 1, that the township accept a transfer deed for the portion of Morton line that crosses the property, and then 2nd, to execute the registrable release of the property for the 1993 merger agreement. Again, so as a result, and in discussions with legal counsel for the owner, the idea was that a reference plan would be done, a survey, and that based on a cost share, that the township would share half the cost of the survey, and then the clients for the legal counsel would pay the other part in terms of registering a title and effectively taking care of the situation. So the financial impact in this report is identified as it stands as the township, as we had discussed with counsel for the applicant, of 50% of the cost of the putting the survey together, the reference plan, and the other half being taken on by the applicant as well as the registration. With you, that's the end of the report, but if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Conley. Questions from members of council? Seeing none. Okay, motion then to receive the report and accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Mr. Conley, thank you.
Thank you.
Next report, planning 2021-66 joint report, minister zoning order request, RIC, Kawartha Downs and surrounding lands. Mr. Conley and Mr. Hancock.
So through your worship to the rest of council, you have before you joint report, Mr. Zoning Order. The recommendation that the council receive report planning 2021-66, the Minister Zoning Order, MZO request from RIC, Kawartha Downs and surrounding lands for information. There was a delegation and presentation earlier on in this council meeting. So if you want, I can certainly cover what was covered there. But essentially what I wanted to indicate is a great deal of information, concept plans, some detailed studies, some detailed information was provided. That said, there's a lot of studies and information that is still coming. It's not a complete package from our standpoint. As staff are not in the position to provide a comment in any detailed way because there's more information coming and studies to still be presented at this time. So if you have any questions, be more than happy to answer those.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Mr. Hancock, you got anything further to add?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think Mr. Connolly has certainly covered the subject quite well.
Fantastic. Okay, motion to receive the report, accept the recommendation. We got Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch. Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Mayor McFadden.
Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, Mr. Hancock, report Public Works 2021-21 water and wastewater operations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The two recommendations before you are that council authorize staff to draft a servicing agreement with the city of Peterborough for the operation and maintenance of the water wastewater systems in Millbrook for a 5-year term between April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2027. And recommendation number 2 is that council direct staff to bring forward a finalized servicing agreement with the city of Peterborough to council for approval at a later date. You may remember that the Public Works staff did call a request for a proposal on this. And while we did have 2 excellent proposals, we were looking to save some costs and look at efficiencies of operations. We did have discussions with the city of Peterborough, and through this process, we've arrived at a approximate on page 2. It shows an approximate saving of $50,000 per year over our present price annual cost paid to PUG under contract. We recognize this as a significant saving, and we are over the 5-year period are expecting in the range of we've estimated to be 178,000 at this point in time. So we're looking at our operations to try and cut the cost to the users in Millbrook, and this was one way of trying to do that. The attachment to this report is a City of Peterborough report that goes forward this evening, also making a similar recommendation on authorization from their council to enter into an agreement with the township for these operations. So with that being said, the information in the report is before you, and if you have any questions, please ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hancock. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Belch. And then I got Councillor Huntley. Okay, go ahead.
For you, Mayor, just wondering to Mr. Hancock, I was under the impression that the city of Peterborough was no longer going to be sort of handling the, I guess, the work that we had contracted with them. What's happened sort of in the interim?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Belch, presently the city of Peterborough is a subcontractor to PUG. They do handle our wastewater operations presently under the agreement with PUG. So they presently are actually active in the Millbrook area at our plant. Their operator is a city employee, but it is under contract with PUG at present. The operations where the city could foresee some cost efficiencies is if they looked at dual licensed operators. That's with water, wastewater, and because of our SCADA system, they looked at other efficiencies that were available for us to being able to track our plant and water, both sewage and water operations in off hours. So they were doing it presently, but we were ending up with 2 operators. And with this process, we're looking at possibly 1 operator handling both water and wastewater. But PUG, the city is presently operating And they are in an agreement to stay with that operation, but also to expand it.
Thank you. Very good. Councillor Huntley?
It's through you, Chair. Are we to expect the water rates to come back for yet another adjustment and approval?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Huntley, I don't expect the rates to change significantly. I think if we keep making changes to try and look at cost efficiencies in the longer term, I expect the users will see significant savings. We did see that in our report through CN Watson. We've seen that we did not have as large a cost impact as was originally intended. And I think with these types of changes, we're expecting those savings will show more and more as we go forward. But right now, we're hopefully building up some monies in reserves while lowering our costs. That's our intent. The water user rate has been passed, of course, for the next 4 years, and we will certainly, any monies that are not used in operations will build our reserves, and that's all good for the township and the Millbrook users.
Very good. Any further questions from members of council? If not, motion then to receive the report and accept the recommendation. Councillor Huntley, Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Our next report, Public Works 2021-22 Municipal Solar Units December update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, this is a joint report again with both from Public Works and Finance. Both Director of Finance Kimberly Pope has done a great job on putting together a spreadsheet that I hopefully explains all the information that might not have been all together at one place before. And we are both here if there are any questions on the report, but it is a receive as information report and an update, and hopefully it addresses council's previous motion.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Any questions for Mr. Hancock? None. Motion to receive the report. Councillor Huntley?
Sorry.
One question. Okay, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. Not so much a question, but a suggestion. And I would suggest that this report come back annually with the same sort of compare, so we can track this program. Like, rather than, the way it has previously come back just inside the budget, I'd rather see the spreadsheet that's been developed continue to be maintained on an annual basis.
Okay, so just to be clear, let's scroll through this report just so I can see.
So this is the status of this project, right?
Okay.
And I would like to see this spreadsheet come back on an annual basis, updated with actuals.
Okay, when would we have our actuals in, Mr. Hancock?
Typically, they come, usually our actuals don't totally show up till the end of the year, more in January. That's when we have the year. But if it's a case of producing this sheet, and maybe this is a question that I pass along to Ms. Pope, but is it reasonable that this come forward as part of the budget deliberations that might happen in late January, February, something of that nature? Does that make sense, Ms. Pope?
Through the mayor to council, we could definitely do it at that time. I think the best opportunity would be in February, because we'd have all the revenues received, because you're right, Wayne, they don't come in until sometime in January. So we would have all that information, and then we could give, instead of estimated year end being this time of year, we could give them final year end. So probably February annually, maybe coming forward at the same time that we're bringing forward the final budget.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Okay,
I think that.
Go ahead.
I think that's we would bring it forward as a joint document along with the budget document that satisfies council.
Okay.
Would.
Very good. So just to be clear, are we doing it as part of the budget, or we're just going to do it as a separate report around budget time?
Through you, Mayor, to council, I think because it doesn't directly tie into the budget discussions that we will have had, usually the February meeting, we're approving the final budget and it's after the public document. So I'd rather it be a separate report, but it could come together at the same time. So right after Family Day, we usually have the Tuesday council meeting, and we could definitely do it at the same time.
Okay. All right. Very good. So it's basically going to be this exact same report, but with updated actuals for the current year. That would be essentially the difference.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Councilor Hunt, you got a motion?
I'd like to see this report annually.
And we're going to do February, right?
In February, sure.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor McFadden, what if we add something, a second motion that says, and that staff provide council with an annual actuals update with the final budget on the status of the project?
Sounds good to me.
Works.
Excellent.
Okay, very good. We got a mover from Councilor Huntley, seconder, Mr. Hancock. Seconder, Councilor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
I'm sorry, I was giggling at the Hancock.
You couldn't find his name. You couldn't find his name, could you?
Who was the seconder on that? I apologize.
We got Councilor Belch is the thirder.
Wonderful. Councilor Belch.
Yes.
Madam
Deputy-
Clerk. Okay, good. Go
Deputy
ahead, sir.
Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councilor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, 10.11, Report Fire 2021-05, Emergency Program Updates. Welcome back, Chief Belfort.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The Fire Department Report 2021-05. The recommendations before Council today are that bylaw number 2021-73 being a bylaw to adopt an emergency management program and emergency response plan to meet other requirements under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act is approved. And that number 2, that bylaw 2021-74 being a bylaw to appoint the Emergency Program Management Coordinator, CEMC, and an alternate CEMC for Kevin Monaghan is approved. And that Council approved the minutes from the Emergency Management Program Committee meeting held on October 12th, 2021.
Very good. Thank you, Chief Belfort. Any questions for the chief? Seeing none, motion then to receive that report, accept the recommendations. Deputy Mayor Graham and Councilor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councilor Belch,
Yes.
Councilor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Chief. Next report, Corporate Services 2021-22, unopened Ann Street Road Allowance. Ms. Page.
Thank you, Mayor McFadden. Through you to the members of council, before you is Corporate Services Report 2021-22. It is that council received the report unopened Ann Street Road Allowance for information, and that council retains the property known as Ann Street Unopened Road Allowance. At the conclusion of the November 1st meeting, staff were directed to meet. So myself, John Conley, Wayne Hancock, and Karen Ellis met and reviewed the information that was in front of us against the official plan policies, good planning practices, designs, and engineering principles, and potential future development at the lands of 53 King Street, and staff determined that they wanted to retain the land. Those are the recommendations before you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Councilor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, I understand that there's some information that is still coming forward on this report. So I would move that we defer it until that information's been received.
Very good. Mover from Councilor Huntley, seconder. Myself, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councilor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
No.
and Councilor Belch.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. And
So
motion
just for
approved.
clarification, Mayor McFadden, will staff be receiving the additional information? Then you want us
Yes,
to report back
when
to
you
you?
receive the additional information, then staff will bring back this report. We don't need a new report, but I would expect that there will be additional attachments to it.
Wonderful.
Councilor
Thank you
Huntley,
very
does
much.
that work? Councilor Huntley?
That
That's
works.
Okay, very good. Okay, next item is report CAO report and capital status. Questions for Ms. Hurley? Deputy Mayor Graham.
Through you, Mayor. Ms. Hurley, just a question. I know that there was some correspondence between us and the province with regards to the jail property. And I was just wondering, I believe I heard through the grapevine that there may have been a new appointment or some sort of correspondence. Can you provide council with an update on that at this time?
Absolutely. Through you, Chair, to council. I did receive a phone call from IO, and there has been a new person that has been I would say, assigned to our file. Her name is Lucia Jackman, and they have advised us that the IO, or formerly the correctional facility, Millbrook Correctional Facility, is listed as a ministry hold at this time. So what that means is there is lots of conversation always about the former correctional facility. But what it means is basically it's on hold until further direction from the province. So they're not going forward with anything more at this time, such as disposition of their land process, until the province releases it. So I'm assuming that's what that really means, is they're talking amongst themselves of what the potential use could be for that property within their own government, to see if there's any interest there before they actually go through the whole process of disposition of land. They also know, as we've done in the past, we have a letter on file that stated that the Township of Kawartha is interested in having conversation with the province should they get to that point of disposing of their property. There's a proper process that will be followed, and we will follow up with them, and they will follow up with us should they get to that point. I did ask for a timeline, council, but at this time they had no idea, or even expression of an idea, of when the province will decide whether or not there is an alternative use for that property, or if it would go through the process of disposition of land.
So just to reiterate then, just to follow up and clarify, Mayor, through you, there is no timeline for any planned divestiture of that property by the province. And there is also no timeline as to when they might decide that they will be divesting themselves of that or other properties.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Good question, Deputy Mayor Graham. Any further questions for Ms. Hurley on the CAO report and capital status? If none, then a motion to receive that. Councillor Huntley and Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item is council committee verbal reports. Councillor Belch, anything to report from your committee?
Nothing at this time.
Very good. Councillor Huntley.
Just that from the BIA perspective, the Christmas in the Village was last Thursday, I guess it was, and it was extremely well attended, even though the weather gods weren't necessarily on their side. So it was a great event to see it back again in the village.
Excellent. Deputy Mayor Graham.
Nothing to report at this time. We'll look forward to the next meeting of Millbrook Trails in January and welcome our new member.
Very good. And just sort of a follow-up on just council committee verbal reports. The BIA Christmas in the Village was definitely a success. It was great to see so many people out. It's nice to see things somewhat returning back to normal and having that opportunity to celebrate. One of the concerns that was raised at the event, and I certainly have concerns with, is the use of the municipal lights for providing electricity. And it seems to be an ongoing problem. And bottom line, it's not our staff and it's not the lights, it's the use or expected use of the lights that's resulting in breakers blowing and staff running around the whole time trying to fix them. And I think bottom line, it's something we're going to have to deal with, because the flack that our staff took and as well as some BIA members took was unacceptable. And quite frankly, I don't believe that we should be using the electricity out of those lights, because by having all those lights blown along that one side and all the extension cords all over the place and the hazards, it's creating an issue. And I don't want it to take away from the events. There's other ways to deal with it, whether it's bringing in some portable power. They do it all the time for trade shows, etc. I just think we need a more safe and responsible way for the BIA to provide power to the booths. And plugging into light posts clearly isn't it, because we didn't, there was nothing positive that came out of that experience relative to the use of electricity. So I'm looking to Yvette. We can either pass a motion or suggested motion with regards to the use of those light standards for electricity, or we can try to work with the BIA for an alternative means. But at the end of the day, we got to stop the use of using those lights. That's not what they're intended for, and it is creating a safety hazard. Ms. Hurley?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to council, maybe, are you looking for staff to report back to the BIA and talk to them about this process? Or is your question just for clarity of any events in the future? Like more general, that you're concerned with any event that obviously that goes on that would potentially want to tie into electricity?
Yeah, I don't mean it to be a surprise to the BIA or any other group that wants to organize an event downtown. I just think there needs to be more coordination around it. Bottom line, I don't think the light standard should be available for electricity. I'm not trying to leave groups in the high and dry. It's just that they need to plan for alternatives for providing the electricity, because what we're currently using and the expectation that we're just going to have great big power bars and extension cords and everything out of our streetlights and the blown, of which now we've paid contractors to service the lights, we've blown the fuses, and now we've got repairs that we have to make to the lights. It creates a danger for everybody, and it's not, they were never intended for that purpose. So I would like to coordinate the conversation between our staff and the BIA, because I'm not trying to leave them high and dry, but I think the message needs to be sent. The use of the electricity out of the streetlights is no longer going to be acceptable. So I'm looking whether you just want a simple motion that we're no longer going to provide the lights, but I would like this follow-up from the staff to let them know that we're here to work with you, but that's not going to be one of the options moving forward. Ms. Hurley?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to council, maybe the suggestion would be that we draft a policy. So it doesn't matter. We'll investigate what services we can or cannot provide. We'll draft it into a policy, and then the policy would be available for anyone, for any event that goes on, potentially in the Millbrook area in the downtown core.
That sounds reasonable. Council? Councilor Huntley?
I'm in favor of us drafting a policy to kind of how we use that or what precautions we need to be in place, but I'm not in favor of just an outright ban on the power itself. Like, I think there are ways that we can come to terms with how to use the power that makes it safe and doesn't trip breakers and cause the commotions that it did cause. But an outright just ban on the power, I don't see that as being the right solution.
Well, I agree with Ms. Hurley's suggestion for a policy, but the Wild West of everybody plugging in has got to stop. And unless we're planning on having a large number of staff down there controlling who's plugging what in, everybody's just running extension cords all over. And literally we had extension cords and power bars in mud puddles with wires coming out all over. There was no control over it. And I don't really want to see all of our staff down there trying to patrol who's plugging in, who's not plugging in. And quite frankly, I was really disappointed with a couple BIA members as well as Booth and the response of how they were dealing with our staff, not appropriate. And quite frankly, we need to have a policy, and it doesn't have to be overarching. If somebody wants to plug in one thing for one event and it's a small power usage, okay, that can be covered in the policy. But to run a street event and everybody running extension cords into the lights and being disrespectful to our staff when everything's blowing, it's not called for. Ms. Hurley?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to council, I still believe a policy is a good suggestion, so it keeps it very clear. But I would like the opportunity to go back to staff and take a look and see what are those options, because there might be we might be able to utilize a certain amount. It just depends upon what that voltage is. It might be where the connection is, and then that way we can report back. But I'm fine with maybe coming up with some options and solutions instead of just saying absolutely no hydro for any type of event in the downtown area.
Perfect. I would look forward to a policy. I think that we can come back and then we can have a discussion at that point as what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and I think we'll have a better understanding of how we'll move forward. I think that's very reasonable. Can I get a motion then to that effect? So we're going to come back with a draft policy for using the use of electricity from the streetlights in the downtown events. That's it, Ms. Hurley?
Just a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had my hand up there. I'm not sure it was answered or not. So are we talking about an independent policy for that? Or wouldn't it just simply be an amendment to an existing policy regarding street closures, that there be a plan for providing, should electricity be required, that they create a plan to say, and work with staff to submit it as to how they're going to provide power for the purpose of the event? Like, why create a power policy versus just incorporating it into street closure related events that we already have probably policies around? We just don't have that element as a part of the consideration.
reasonable. I'm just trying to think of examples of when we wouldn't close the street and use the power, but I can't think of any, but Ms. Hurley.
No,
has her hand
sorry,
up, so-
sorry, I should clarify then, Mayor. I meant for any event that requires the closure of the street, that they provide, they address their own power needs for the purpose of that event. So
Oh,
it's
okay,
not
okay.
just the assumption, right? Like, if you're gonna have the whole street closed and you're gonna require power, you're going to need to explain how you plan on doing that. And then staff can say, okay, well, if it's one cord here for a string of lights, okay, we can accommodate that. But if it's 30 vendors in booze, et cetera, you know, with fridges or freezers and things like a market, for example, where everyone has a power need, well, that's obviously not the same thing as being able to simply plug in. And there are circumstances, like Councillor Huntley mentioned, that are probably not policy appropriate. But when you're closing the whole street, there's probably assumption that there's going to be some power requirement, and you have to submit an acknowledgement or a portion of a plan that says, hey, we have thought about it. Here's what we're proposing. What do you think?
I think that can be part of the policy. I think so. My concern is that, and you'd have to deal with the whole event as opposed to the vendors, because the other concern is you don't want to end up with 30 generators on the main street because nobody worked together. Ms. Hurley?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to council and to Deputy Graham's comments. I think if you just give us the opportunity to take it back in at staff, we'll talk as a team and find the best solution, and understanding your comment with regards to closing of the road and could be another segment. But I would take this under consideration with staff and see what we could do, what would work best. We will always try to find the best solution that works for everyone, but still get us where we need to be and get the answers that you're looking for. But I do believe if you leave it with direct staff to be able to investigate, we will come back, whether it's an amendment to what we currently have or a new policy, but we will definitely come back to council and take a look and see what those options would look like.
Excellent. And I think that you could take into consideration with that, if we did have an independent policy on the power, that we would update, as per Deputy Mayor Graham's suggestion, update the street closure process so it automatically triggers any policy that we have in place, because that, therefore, there's no surprises. Nobody likes surprises. Very good. Okay. So we just about got to a motion, right? So our motion is going to be the staff's going to come back with a policy relative to the use of electricity on the main street. Okay, very good. All good. Okay, did I have a mover or a seconder? I can't remember.
I'll move.
Moved by Deputy Mayor. Second? By, okay, Councillor Huntley. Don't make me second a whole bunch of stuff today. Okay, we got a mover and a seconder, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Do you need a motion to receive those verbal reports?
Yes, we do.
I think
Okay,
you did. Yeah.
We did it? Or no,
No,
we didn't?
I think you
We
do.
did not do
Okay.
it. Yes, we do need one.
All right, we got a mover from Deputy Mayor Graham and a seconder from Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote to receive those council committee verbal reports.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Thank you, everybody. Next item is under general business, and it is 11.1 Highway 115 winter maintenance. And it has been an ongoing issue that, despite being outside of our purview and despite trying to best to stay in our lane, it always ends up on our plate, is the issues that seem to continue on the stretch of Highway 115. So my suggestion would be that we send a letter to the Minister of MTO requesting for her to investigate and review the circumstances surrounding the accidents between, help me out, Ms. Page, you've got the specifics.
Section of Highway 115. I apologize for the feedback. Sections of the Highway 115 between the exits of Porter Road, County Road 32 and County Road 10.
Very good. And that you provide a response to council.
Yes, the council directs staff to send a letter to Catherine Mulrooney, Minister of Transportation of Ontario, and Laurie Scott, MPP, to request an investigation and review on the section of Highway 115 between the exits of Porter Road and County Road 10.
And provide a response back to council.
And provide a response back to council.
Very good. Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, second by Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, everybody. There is no correspondence for information, so we will move into correspondence for action. Our first item is November 19th, 2021 letter from County of Peterborough regarding City of Peterborough draft official plan. That was the original notice of motion that was brought before the County Council and which was sent on to the city. As we are well aware, this notice of motion is now null and void because it was dependent upon the city official plan being deferred in order to deal with this notice of motion. So I would accept a motion simply to receive this. Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item is 13.2, which is the letter that came from the City of Peterborough relative to the same discussion, indicating that they have passed their official plan. However, they wish to continue the discussions relative to annexation on the lands that were specifically identified in the original notice of motion. So I guess at this point, I'm just going to take a step back from and take a look at the bigger issue. When we were going through when the city was going through the official plan process, it became obvious at their public meeting that the 110 hectares that they had identified in their draft official plan, 80 hectares being in Cold Springs and 30 hectares being in the north end of the City of Peterborough and Shamong. When Brad Smith of Aon specifically spoke and indicated that those 80 hectares were not appropriate employment lands, that they had been designated residential, and he had absolutely no intentions of ever putting employment lands there. But it became evident that they were not moving ahead with a parkway and not moving ahead with any north-south corridor to address the 30 hectares that were in the north. To me personally, it felt like the city was about to make a 30-year decision on employment lands that, quite frankly, they were never going to be able to use. And having sat on council for more than a decade now and continually listening to the issues that Rhonda Keenan and PCAD and her predecessors bring forward of a lack of service industrial lands that are available not only to the city, but to the entire region, I thought it would be prudent to take a step forward and bring forward an offer for discussion of 110 hectares that could quite simply be swapped in for the lands that clearly had been publicly discussed as not appropriate. And from that, thereby, that's where my notice of motion came from. It was literally looking at our neighbor at a moment in need to try and address their problem. And in the end, the official plan went before City Council, and a majority of their council believe that the lands that they have designated will meet their needs for employment for the next 30 years. So at this point, what I deem to be a need for the city is now turned into a want from the city, because they've already said to their citizens, they've already sent direction to the province that they have everything they need for the next 30 years. So quite frankly, my motion and my intent is irrelevant at this point. They've met their needs. So I'm quite content to send a letter to the City of Peterborough, to each member of their council, and congratulate them on passing their official plan and their transportation plan that will meet their needs for the next 30 years. That's it. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I understand the mayor. I think the only thing that I might adjust or include in the motion is that, as you and I are well aware at all levels of government, we've been expressing interest in trying to facilitate regional economic conversations in just about any shade, color, or you name it. And we have been completely unsuccessful thus far with all of that effort. And I know it frustrates you and it frustrates me, because I thought there was more of an appetite for conversation. So my adjustment to the motion, that would be, whether it's the same letter or in a different letter, that we draft that it include an expression and support and enthusiasm from the township at participating in the establishment and creation of a regional economic strategy, and that that letter could be compromised or addressed to all of the same audience, the members of the council of the City of Peterborough, County Council at Peterborough County, and the president of PCAD as well. Because, as was alluded to by one of the delegations earlier, without a plan, you're doomed to fail. And there is no plan. And the failure really is, at this point, a failure to communicate or start talking about what that solution could be. And so hopefully we can start that plan, and we'll just continue to come up with creative ways to try to spur it on. But onwards and upwards, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think we can very eloquently include that segment within the response that we'll send to their council, simply because that regional economic development plan that you alluded to is one that they have supported in their official plan that they've just adopted. So it works very harmoniously along with their support of their official plan. And here we are, Cavan Monaghan is willing to have those conversations of regional economic development. And quite frankly, we heard it earlier today, even our developers are extending the olive branch to provide and work towards providing services to the city of Peterborough Airport. So we will take have a motion to send the city of Peterborough, every member of council, response. Number one, congratulating them on the adoption of their official plan and their transportation plan, of which they have been working a very long time on. And secondly, that in support of their official plan, that we are very supportive of meeting to have regional economic development plan discussions to further the interests of the entire region. Does that work, Deputy Mayor Graham?
Yep.
Very good. All right, we've got a mover. Councillor Huntley and seconder Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, are you clear? I apologize. I whirled through that pretty quick.
Through Mayor McFadden, I think we're clear if the members of council are. Yep.
Okay, excellent. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Our next item is bylaws. So we have several bylaws. Madam Clerk, before I read them all, is there any that we are removing?
Through Mayor McFadden, all bylaws today are being approved.
All good, positive day. Okay, that bylaw number 2021-71 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2018-58 as amended, otherwise known as the Township of Cavan Monaghan zoning bylaw 918 Highway 7A, and bylaw number 2021-72 being a bylaw to temporarily exempt certain lands within registered plans 45M-259 and 9M-733 Colebrook Drive, the Township of Cavan Monaghan from part lot control, and bylaw number 2021-73 being a bylaw to adopt an emergency management program and emergency response plan and to meet other requirements under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, and bylaw number 2021-74 being a bylaw to appoint a Community Emergency Management Coordinator, CEMC, and alternate CEMC for the Township of Cavan Monaghan, and bylaw number 2021-75 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the acknowledgement and direction for the transfer of PIN 28006-004 LT to the Township of Cavan Monaghan, and bylaw number 2021-76 being a bylaw to impose and consolidate user fees and charges be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. There's no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. Confirming bylaw being bylaw number 2021-77, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held December 6, 2021. Be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Huntley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Huntley and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes,
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
motion is approved. Upcoming events and meetings. The only one I'd like to add, and my apologies, I just noticed it was missing. Ms. Pope, if you are still available, the date and time of the public budget meeting. I believe it's Thursday.
9
Through
a.m.
Mayor McFadden, if Ms. Pope is busy, I can speak to that. It is Thursday at 9 a.m.
Thursday at 9 a.m.
Yes.
via Zoom. Excellent,
Yes.
thank you. And in
all the
addition,
information's on the website if anybody would like to see it.
perfect. And in addition to that, Cavan Monaghan Public Library Board meeting Tuesday, January 18th, 2022 at 7 p.m. It's a hybrid meeting in person and via Zoom, and Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting Thursday, January 20th, 2022 via Zoom, and Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting Monday, January 24th, 2022 via Zoom. That is all. Thank you, everybody.